To get this party started.
14 seconds.
Right, me too.
Jimmy, are we ready? Right. Was that a hold on, or you
Way to
said
get
go?
through the easy things first.
Haven't seen you out for a while.
Jimmy, is that a go?
We don't have any recommendations today.
I now call the Snoqualmie City Council to meet.
Visible with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, can you please take the roll call?
Councilmember Jeans.
Here.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Holloway.
Here.
Councilmember Lizay.
Here.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Here.
Councilmember Sundwall.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Here.
Mayor Larson.
I am here. May I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Mayhew?
I'd like to request that the minutes from April 9th be moved off the consent agenda and that AB 18054 be moved off the consent agenda.
Okay.
Also request that under Committee of the Whole, we add an internal controls update.
Okay. We can do that, Bob, at the Committee of the Whole. All right.
And lastly, just request that under Parks and Public Works Committee, that AB 18056 be presented prior to AB 18057. They're related, and it would be more useful to go in the other order.
Is the second required for any of those?
Okay.
No.
I'll ask the Parks and Public Works Committee Chair, do you have any objection to that?
No.
Okay. Is there any other objections to the other items mentioned by Councilmember Mayhew? All right, with that, I'll ask the city clerk to help me remember all that. I'm sorry? Yes. Any other items? Okay. Councilor, I'd like to ask that we add an executive session, or actually, first, let me make this comment. We had been developing the practice in terms of kind of tightening up Robert's Rules of Order to assure that the majority of the council is being respected, to make sure that if any other new items were added to the agenda, that was done at this time in the agenda. Past practice has always been, we come around Committee of the Whole and council members bring things up, and that's not been an issue, but we need to be more mindful of just respecting that a majority needs to weigh in on where we spend our precious time and resources or attention. And so I will not be, as chair, allowing for the addition of new items under Committee of the Whole. If new items are to be added, those will be to be brought up at this point in the agenda when firming up the agenda. And if a council member has an item to add, then I'll defer to the majority of the council as to whether they agree that's an item that should be taken up. If a majority of the council does not agree that's an item that should be taken up, it will not be taken up. Okay, any objection? All right, with that, I'd like to ask the council to motion to add an executive session to tonight's meeting. We're going to do it right at the beginning of the meeting because of the sequence or timing. If someone could just move to add.
Moved.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to add an executive session this evening. All those in favor? Well, I don't need to read the language into it at this point. Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion is carried. Are there any other items for the agenda? Councilmember Shepherd?
Okay, is this the time where we add new items? Is that
If you'd like to add them, this is the time to bring it up, yes.
okay, I'd like to get an update on Sister Cities.
Okay.
Didn't hear what she said.
An update on Sister Cities,
From who?
From who exactly?
as far as when we're going to be having it considered or talked about in committee meetings.
I'll defer to the rest of the council in terms of how they want to respond to that,
So
or the
we-
net chair of the CDC
Yeah.
committee, I think.
We have not.
So
I think at our last CDC meeting, we agreed that we would get an update on sister cities at the CDC committee meeting, and so maybe it would be appropriate for the council to get that after that. Because I don't even know who would be presenting the matter of the update on the sister cities.
For the purposes of tonight's meeting, Councilmember Shepherd's requested that that be added as an item under Committee of the Whole, I assume, to at least have some report. Is there any objection to just adding that under Committee of the Whole to discuss, at least, I'll defer at that point to the chair in terms of what your report could be, Bob, and where you see it going from there, or rest of the council could weigh in. Or whether the council doesn't feel it should just be brought up at all at this time.
I mean, if you're asking me if I will give an update on sister cities, but I'm far from prepared for doing anything like that. I would not support that.
Okay, for at least tonight's agenda.
Well,
Councilmember Holloway?
so I believe the CDC has action to, and I don't think you're saying you don't, but I think you have action to look at the Sister City Association and go through and do a level set of where we are currently. I agree, I'd rather, well, and tell you the truth, guys, I can't get through the hysteria and almost slanderous comments in the emails. I want a factual layout of what's going on, and I want to give Bob and the CDC time to do that. So I would object it being on the agenda for tonight.
I think,
Councilman Lee.
if I believe to be correctly, and I'd have to look at the minutes again to make sure, but we did move to discuss sister cities at CDC, so that's where it should be discussed. At the last committee, at that council meeting, we did move to push it to CDC, so that's the appropriate location for that to be discussed.
Councilmember Shepherd?
So my question is, which meeting will it be coming into? Which date?
Well, it'll be at the next CDC committee meeting that we will give an update, or get an update, and then at the next council meeting, we would,
Well, I think
Get
you're
it to
going
the council and to the
I assume
public.
you're going to determine that at the CDC meeting, depending on where that conversation goes. Would you disagree with that, Bob?
that's good?
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Any other items for the agenda tonight? All right. So, all encompassing, back to the original motion on the agenda, including the changes that were approved of. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. So at this time, I adjourn the regular meeting and call for an executive session regarding potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, Section 1II. Bob Sturbank, Bob Larson are asked to join the session. The executive session will last approximately 10 minutes, and there will not likely be action following, correct? Okay. The executive session will be held in the conference room upstairs, so all of you can enjoy your seats and go out on the deck, enjoy the weather, and have some good conversations while we're upstairs. So we'll be back shortly. So with that, the meeting's
That's my password.
Oh, boy.
All right, regular council is now back in session.
Password.
Council, at this point, I'm going to move Agenda Bill 18052 up to the top even before citizens' comments so that school districts, finance director and the attorney can perhaps go about their way, if that's okay with you. So if someone could read in it, well, actually, I don't know if we're going to necessarily read in the agenda bill. I think the chair of that committee is going to make a recommendation to.
Well, should we still read it in and then motion?
I suppose we could.
that
It's not
me?
like an ordinance that
Yeah,
you
that's
get any
public-
bonus
why
for
don't you
reading.
Public Works and then I'll.
All right. Mount Si High School has expanded to accommodate more students and staff, 640 total. That expansion and increase in utilization of both water and sewer resources generates this general facilities charge, or GFC. Utility rate ordinance 1187 included in council packets defines all the GFC charges enacted by City Council in 2017. The attached 1040 development agreement describes how we charge for anyone connecting to the 1040 reservoir water supply system. Utilities Division will be offering a reduction in this GFC to local residents, as 51% of the new high school students will be from Snoqualmie, and these households have already paid for their fair share of the system capital costs. Our residents have already paid their portion of any GFC calculated for this expansion. Move to approve Mount Si High School expansion general facilities charge.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18052 as stated by Councilmember Sunwall. Any
So-
discussion, council?
Well, I would like to motion that, I think we and the school district are in negotiations and are about to reach agreement on some final matters, but I think we need to give it 2 more weeks. So I would like to motion this back to committee to return to council in 2 weeks.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to kick it back to committee for 2 more weeks. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is
No.
carried.
We had no.
I'm sorry, was there a no there, or?
No.
All right, one abstention or one nay. All right, with that, back to the top of the agenda.
Are they free to go, Mayor?
Yes, they can go enjoy that beautiful evening. Thanks for your patience. Sorry to have to wait to the executive
2
session.
times in a row, Ryan.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, at this time, is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on any item that is not on the agenda tonight? Again, as part of our protocol, we limit comments to 2 minutes. Ask that you come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Please deliver your comments in an efficient and courteous manner. Avoid comments that are unduly repetitious or not relevant to city business. Address the council administration as a whole. Do not single out individuals. And please keep in mind that the council is only here to listen to your comments. It's not a Q&A session or a session to sort of start debate. So don't be offended or think that they're not being responsive when they don't respond. They're just here to listen to you at that time. Okay, so at this time, is there anyone that would like to come forward and make any comments? Mr. Ma, Russell.
Hi, my name is Russell Ma. I live at 8803 Wild Avenue Southeast in Snoqualmie. I am a member of the SSCA board. I have heard many things about the board. Watched the video last 2 weeks ago that occurred. I am here just to offer. I am available to speak, answer questions, not tonight because I can't address questions, but anytime that you want to talk, I'm willing to talk about things that have gone on the SSCA. It represents your city. It has your name on it. I will not address slanderous comments. I will not address moral things that have attacked me morally. That's why I've included many of you on the emails that I have sent in response to some emails. But I'm just here to say I'm available. Councilwoman Shepherd has my phone number. We've already spoken. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Russell. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight? Mario? Oh, go ahead, Sherilyn.
My name is Sherilyn Lux. I live at 8370 Falls Avenue Southeast, and I would like to thank Russell Ma for coming this evening.
All right, thank you, Sherilyn. Mario?
Good evening, dear council members. My name is Mario Alegria from Peru. 2 years ago, I studied English in Northwest University, and then I had a short internship here in the City Hall of Snoqualmie to learn how is public administration in USA. I'm from a little city named Pacasmayo, and since I finished my major, I decided to volunteering for different activities in order to help and also to learn as much as possible for different activities and someday contribute through my knowledge to the development of my city. I came to Seattle just some days ago, and I wanted to visit the Snoqualmie, this city, and the great people I met 2 years ago. But I knew my name was in some emails with some comments and baseless false accusations. So I want to think that person is just confused. And I would like to give my contact information. I am available. And if someone wants to clarify something, I'm free to reply. And I do this because I respect a lot this city, this beautiful city, and the wonderful people who live here. I'm glad to be here again, see you two again, and thank you for letting me say this.
Thank you, Mario. Good to see you. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak at this time? All right, seeing no one else move forward, we'll move on to the public hearing. We don't have anything for public hearings presentation. On to the consent agenda. All items listed below would be enacted by one motion. Action items include minutes for the April 9th, 2018. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you. I was going to say, remind me about the agenda bills, but right off the bat, boom. Okay, so that's been moved. Items included approval of warrants as stated in the agenda packet. Other approvals include Agenda Bill 18050, Resolution 1440, canceling certain city-paid warrants. Agenda Bill 18051, host and promote 2018 Snoqualmie Movies and Music in the Park Series. No, okay, that's been moved.
Can I take one more off? Is it too late?
Too late. Agenda Bill 18058, letter of agreement for the 2018 For Culture Sustained Support Funding Award, and Agenda Bill 18059, agreement for arts program services with the Mount Si Artists Guild, 2018 Finally Friday Art and Wine Walk Series. Do I have a motion, Council?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so on the one for movies and music in the park series, I know that we've had some interest in moving some of the movies from Friday night to a different night. And I think it would be nice to get some sort of a survey of businesses on the Ridge to see how they feel about that.
Right. Any other comments on the consent items?
Yeah, I'm not sure what day the movies go on is in our jurisdiction. I think the Parks Department can probably handle that.
Okay.
Well,
Councilmember Holloway.
so caution on this, because they used to be Thursday night, and you have to balance between what the people who live in the city and have houses close by, balance that against economic activity in Long Center Boulevard. It's a bit rude to have movies blaring into people's windows Thursday night when they got to get up Friday morning and go to work. That's why they were moved to Friday night.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so it's my understanding that they would be okay with Saturday night instead of Friday night.
So, point of order again, Mayor. Do you have,
Yes, sir. Councilmember.
are we going to debate what movies they show too? I mean, at some point, we need to let parks do their job.
Well, I guess we could have Dan speak to that, but I think at this point, the horse is out of the barn. They need to sign the contracts with the vendor doing the movies and so forth. And this has been vetted through the parks, or the Snoqualmie Parks and Events Committee and council committees, so forth already. All right, if there's no other discussion then on this or any other items on the consent agenda, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on any of these items prior to action? I'll get you next. Anna, go ahead.
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard, Southeast. I'm just confused because a year ago we started to have conversations for more collaborative relationships between the merchants and the city. And I guess we're Peggy, we don't need a survey, we just need someone to ask us. There hasn't been anyone that's addressed us in any shape or form. So I guess I'm just confused where the collaboration is coming from and why it's just not happening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anna. Yes, please.
Oh, and Saturday?
Thank you.
Jessica Agtuga, 7822 Douglas Avenue Southeast. I just wanted to clarify, I think that last year the
Sorry,
movies
could you
were on.
restate your name real quick? Or?
Jessica Agtuga. It's Agtuca. So last year the movies were on Thursdays and they were played well past the noise ordinance hour, which was 10 o'clock. And so I think that the biggest thing, rather than just discussing which movies are played or what night it is just following the noise ordinance policy. I work at the Bindle Stick, and we had tried to get the noise ordinance extended for our music shows, and it was denied by a majority of the community. And I just wanted to point out that the movies were being played past 10 o'clock and, you know, in a park that's surrounded by houses on a Thursday. And that was okay, but not for a business that was actually trying to do something to make money and bring art to the community. So I just wanted to let anyone know who didn't know that it was Thursdays past 10 o'clock. So if they want to move it to Saturday, that'd be cool, because then there's not kids running around after dark without parents. And yeah, anyway, that's all I want to say.
Jessica, thank you. Does anyone else like to speak at this time? All right, seeing no one else move forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. With that, we move on to ordinances. Finance Administration Committee, Agenda Bill 18049, ordinance authorizing the issuance of water and sewer utility revenue bonds in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed, that amount will be defined, for the purpose of providing funds to finance and refinance improvements to the city's water, sewer, and stormwater systems, satisfying the reserve requirement, and paying cost of issuance for the bond, providing the form, terms, and covenants of the bonds, delegating certain authority to approve the final terms of the bonds, providing for severability and an effective date, and authorizing all matters related thereto. This was introduced on the April 9th, and it is here for a second look tonight, and will be ready for action on the 14th. So I believe that the summary statement was already read in. No motion needs to be read, so we can just open it for any other further discussion and comment.
So let me go through the discussion we had in F&A. As many of you have seen, there was an original plan put together September-March timeframe, in which we had $7.1 million of the bond anticipation note, which is current projects going on right now that we've paid in, $5.2 million for what we expected for the 2018 capital expenditures, and $7.7 million for the 2019 capital expenditures. That would be a total of $30 million worth of capital expenditures that we are currently looking at. The plan at that stage was to have a $23.2 million revenue bond and have the rates pay $6.8 million of that to close out the $30 million. In discussions with that, we looked at a lot of the projects and realized that there were some omissions, both arithmetic and also in regards to what are termed soft cost, engineering oversight, things along those lines. What was reviewed in the last F&A and also in Public Works was really what we call option 2, which again has a $7.1 million for the bond, $15.8 million for 2018 capital expenditures, and $8.6 million for the 2019 capital expenditures, which it brings it up to $31.5 million, with a similar split between revenue bond and cash from proceeds to fund that. In reviewing that in F&A, we really said, let's go ahead and move forward with the next 2 years of projects. What am I getting there? Option 2, which would be the 2017, 2018, 2019 projects for a bond of $23.9 million. The thinking there was that now was the time to go ahead and get funding. Rates will not be lower. All indications are they were going up. So we should go ahead and capture what we can. Am I on track?
It looks like you have different numbers.
You said 23, did you mean to say 31?
31. 31.5.
Yeah, you said 23.
You said 23, that's where you kind of threw everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought we just said option 2.
Well, there was look at option 2, which would bring in the 2020 capital projects, adding $10.5 million into the capital, making the capital expenditure $42 million, a revenue bond of $32.2 million, cash of 19.8. That was everything?
9.8.
All right, I got to back up, I'm sorry. The recommendation out of the F&A committee was that with the bond rates as they are now, with our current staffing back up where it should be to support the projects, and that we've got a large chunk of these already committed in the 2017 bond, was to go ahead and fund the $42 million capital ask. Again, that would constitute a $32.2 million bond request. Okay. I will tell you that the vote was 3 to 1.
3 to 1.
Or 2 to 1. I
like
gave
his-
them an extra vote. I am debt adverse. I would prefer that we hold to what we call revised option 1, which is a $23.9 million bond. My put is that every plan you make is typically optimistic, so to expect these projects to slide out as events happen, and we've seen that occur to projects. Take downtown as a case in point, so that'll move some of these expenditures out. I would further stipulate that I'm concerned that the numbers aren't as solid that we're dealing with, that we had to uncover some of these soft costs in our discussions. I would further stipulate that one of these projects, the River Street Park Avenue Bank stabilization, is included in the total and is supposed to be a total reimbursement from King County as noted. So it shouldn't be in the total that we're gonna go bond. So the numbers are still a little squishy for me. My personal recommendation against what the committee says is that we go with what is called option 1 revised and do a $23.9 million. So I think before you tonight is take benefit of the low interest rates, take benefit that we've got staff on board to go ahead and execute these projects, and go for where'd it go, $42 million total with a $32.2 million bond. If you think you still have concerns over the numbers, you have concerns that the projects will execute as planned, you have concerns that we're not taking advantage of further optimization and grants, then you ought to go with the revised revenue bond rate of $23.9 million. I think that is the question before the council tonight.
Councilman Lasay.
I agree with a number of points Councilmember Holloway's made. The one I think that we also need to take into consideration is that no time in the past have we ever undertaken more than, and I believe it was only just last year, $9 million in projects during the year. Previously, this project volume was around $6 million. The main idea that I get stuck on is that for the tax exemption, it requires reasonable expectation that we'll spend at least 85% of the bond proceeds within 3 years. I have a hard time believing that we'll get to 85% in 3 years if we're going with the higher number. If projects move out, projects adjust, things happen, it puts us at risk that I don't know if we're ready to take on. I would rather be a little bit more careful. I too am debt adverse and look at it from a standpoint of I think it's reasonable to expect that we can spend the 23.9 in the next 3 years, and that would be where I would lead towards.
Councilmember Stonewall.
I'm struggling with this because I do agree with Brian. This has come before my committee for 2 or 3 times in Public Works, and I guess disappointed or surprised with how sloppy some of the numbers have been. The fact that that building is still in there, the mystery 3 million was missing. And so part of me says, well, what's next? What are we still missing? And I think, but at the same time, I don't doubt that the bulk of what's on there, perhaps all of it, 100% of it, I don't know, is absolutely necessary. But I do tend, I also have to look at the optics of what this looks like as well. And I think there's been enough uncertainty expressed by people smarter than me up here, which is at least 6. You can determine, Mayor, whether you're one of those 6. I don't know. But that I feel like the softer approach of the 23 or whatever the lower number, the risk of, I guess I'm saying I feel like it's better to err on that side than the other side. So that's kind of where I'm leaning.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so I've made this point before I became a council person, but I'm going to bring it back, and that's City of Issaquah has got a plan of $33.6 million in their utility CIP for their 5-year plan. So we're talking about a 2-year plan that's got the approximate same amount of money that we're planning on spending. And on top of that, they don't have any of it being paid for by debt. I realize that Issaquah is larger than us, and I realize they don't have the same format of utilities, but I'd like to see some kind of comparison to another city that's going to be spending this level of spending. It seems inconsistent with what I have seen. I guess that's about all I have to say about that.
Councilmember Holloway, then Sunwall, and then Mayhew. I'm sorry, I'm going to go to Mayhew since he hasn't spoken yet. We'll do round robin.
All right, do we have the slides that were presented to the F&A committee this past Tuesday? Are they available?
PFM slides? Or
Yeah.
You want these slides?
They're there.
So, yeah, those right there. Right in the center.
Middle.
There you go. April 17, right?
If we could go to, yeah, you go to page 2. Yeah.
Footnotes.
So the thing is, there's a lot of numbers pushing around, and I just want to say I share my fellow council members' concerns with the reporting on these projects. I think there's been some slippage on these projects. I think there's been some costs that were overlooked, and I think there's just been some plain changes that haven't been reported in a packaged way to help both the public and council members understand what's been developing. This is an extremely large spending project between now and 2022, $55 million or so. And I think there is rightfully some concern about the level of reporting to the council. But setting that aside, I think what I'm most focused on here is the rates that our citizens will pay for their utilities. And unless we believe that we will not spend this $55 million, and actually unless we believe we won't spend at least $42 million of it, then the question of whether we're going to spend it doesn't exist. When we're going to spend it might be a question, but whether we're going to spend 42 of the 55, I've not heard anyone tell me that that's an issue. So therefore, I believe that we will spend the $42 million. I've looked at the project list. Some of these projects look extremely important. We have some utility infrastructure in Old Snoqualmie here that is very old and, as I understand it, is in jeopardy. And if a water main breaks on us, the costs and inconvenience will be significant. So if we're going to spend $42 million, if we agree that we're going to spend $42 million, here's the other thing we know. We simply cannot pay for that out of our utility rates right now. It's too much money. We would have to quadruple rates or more in order to pay for that with cash. So the way to pay for this is with debt. What I liken this to is a mortgage. So in the discussion, I think, well, if I'm thinking about buying a new stereo, I don't know if people buy stereos anymore.
Called it boombox, Jim.
If I'm talking about taking on credit card get debt to buy a boombox, I have a set of thinking that I apply to that. But, and I'm very risk averse. I'm an accountant, so I'm naturally conservative that way. But this is more like a mortgage. This is, to me, I wouldn't say that I'm I'm debt averse and therefore I won't own a home because I'm scared of the mortgage. I would say no, that's how you pay for a home. And then I'm going to pay off that mortgage over the 30 years that I live there. That's what's going to happen here. We're going to build infrastructure that's going to last at least 30 years, and we're going to pay for it over that time. So I think it's more like a mortgage. So to me, the question is, how do we get the lowest interest rate on that mortgage, on that funding? And what this chart shows us is that if interest rates, which we all believe are moving up, if interest rates move up just 0.35%, we will break even on this if we borrow the full amount to fund that's being proposed. If interest rates go up by more than 0.35%, we will save money for our ratepayers. In fact, if they go up 1%, we will save $500,000, $495,000. That is a significant amount of money, and it will impact people's utility rates. I think.
Which includes deferring the cost of a second bond, doing one versus two.
Yeah, it's net of what we call negative carry, which is you borrow too much, so you know, you're paying interest on money you're not using yet. But on the other hand, you get to invest it, you earn interest, you avoid a second debt issuance, which has a whole set of costs to go. They've netted all of that into that estimate up there. The Fed says we're going to see 3 more interest rate, 2 or 3 more this year, and another 4 interest rate increases next year. That's 1.75%. Okay, at the short end. In the last week, the 10-year rates moved 15 basis points. So these are significant amounts we're talking about that we could save. The notion that we won't go up 0.35% by 2020 seems very unlikely. If we could save $500,000 or more, or even $250,000 for our ratepayers, I think that's really important, and I think it's incumbent on us to do that. And that factors in these concerns about, sorry, the last thing I'll say is if we factor in this notion of, well, maybe we won't spend it as fast as we think we will, fine, maybe we don't get all the $495,000, maybe we get $450,000. We still get an enormous benefit to our ratepayers, and I think we have to do that. The key here is we expect that we will spend the money and interest rates will go up, and we've got to take advantage of those, the situation that we have now, the opportunity that we have now to take advantage of that and save a significant amount of money for our ratepayers.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So if this is such a good deal, do we have a lot of other cities getting on this bandwagon and going out and borrowing money? Do we have articles that can support that?
Can I
Councilmember
answer?
Sunwall.
I think I was
Holloway,
actually
and then
next
Mayhew.
anyway. So a couple things. I have a question for Dan that maybe he might be able to answer, or someone can answer. It's 2 parts. One is, what is the consequence, or actually this might be a question for you. What is the consequence of not spending up to 85%? I'd like to understand that. And if we can please, if we're going to compare cities, can we at least use a city that has its own utility system? I mean, it's completely irrelevant to talk about Issaquah when they don't run their own utility. I mean, let's pick a city at least that runs its own utility. Yeah, so if you could answer.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Deanna Gregory, partner of Pacifica Law Group. Great to see you all again. The consequence is if the 85% or more is not spent within the first 3 years after the bonds are issued, the consequences of the funds have to be yield restricted or some kind of payment. We care a lot about how those monies are invested, so we would want to yield restrict them. The federal government is not too keen on taking your bond proceeds, your tax-exempt bond proceeds, investing them for a long period of time, and potentially making money off of those funds. And so really it would be a yield restriction, or so investing them in some kind of low interest, something like, you know, the pool, or where they'll probably be invested anyways. And then we would make sure we want to keep track of those, revise the plan, keep track of those funds, and make sure those funds get out the door as soon as possible. It does not automatically declare the bonds to be, or does not, the consequence is not automatically that the bonds become taxable, for example. In the event of an audit, which we always want to plan for, it is, the IRS will definitely look at what the reasonable expectation was at the time of issuance. And so that's why we're, I think, having this discussion so much, because the date of issuance is really key.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you.
If I could, I'm going to ask Bob to weigh in real quick, and then I'll come back to Councilmember Mayhew, and then Ross. Go ahead, Bob.
I'd like to supplement on that question. It had been discussed in committee that you have a proportion of the money to be spent is coming from rate revenue. So the idea was perhaps you would look at the bond money, regardless of what the amount is, to spend that earlier on, maybe spend it up front and then spend the cash at the later parts of the years of the projects.
Right.
So you wouldn't have to worry about that 3-year limitation.
Right.
Councilmember Mayhew and then Councilmember Ross. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to Councilmember Ross because round robin, she hasn't weighed in yet. Go ahead, Councilmember Ross.
So it has to be 3 years. It's not 4 years, because we're starting at 2017, 18, 19, and 20, which should be the 4 years that we're looking at for the bond.
The portion that's used to pay off the bond anticipation note goes out right at closing. And so
3 years from closing.
It's 3 years from closing looking forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Not taking into account any payoff of earlier debt or reimbursement. Those all go out the day of issuance.
Councilmember Mayhew.
So, just want to make sure I've got this right. The 3 years, so the maximum that we could borrow would be 85% of what we reasonably expect to spend over the next 3 years from issuance. Is that right?
No.
85%, yes. So within, well, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. So 3 years, let's say you issue debt on May 1st. We would need to have a reasonable expectation that at least 85% of those proceeds, again, we've had this conversation in committee that we like to have all the proceeds spent, or expectation that all the proceeds are spent, which gives you a little bit of a buffer, within 3 years of issuance. So,
right.
Yes.
So,
Well, wait, clarification.
Councilmember Holloway.
If you please, clarification. We could bond 100%. It's just that you have to have a reasonable expectation that you're going to spend 85%.
yeah, I just want to, what he
Right.
said or what I said?
So if
For
I
the-
borrow $100, I have to spend at least $85 within 3 years.
Correct. Yeah, there has to be an expectation that you'll spend at least 85% of what you borrowed within 3 years.
Okay. And so just for sake of discussion, let's say that we issue this on June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
So we could look at what we expect to spend, so that would be June 30th, 2018. So we could look at everything we think we'll spend through June 30th of 2021.
From a legal perspective, yes.
2020, so June of 2021. Okay, and I just want to make the point, we're not talking about anywhere near that number. That number would be well north of 42 million. We're talking about 42 million, which is only the amount that we would spend through December of 20. So we're not even going to that 6 months of 21. And then we're planning to use 10 million of our own cash. So we're only talking about spending or borrowing 32 million of a number that's probably, well, is well north of 42. So we're nowhere near this 85% limitation. And so to the concern that are we within the law, I think we're well within the law. I think what we're trying to decide is, okay, playing within that allowable field, where do we want to be? And we are certainly not talking about going to the maximum borrowing that we might be able to do. We're talking about something that would take us through the end of 20, and possibly that slips 6 months or even a year. The negative carry on that the net is not going to eat too far into that $500,000. And by the way, that's assuming rates only go up 1% at the long end. If they go up more, that number is even bigger. If it goes up less, it's smaller. But we're not anywhere near the maximum here of what we could borrow.
And that's what you could borrow at a tax exempt basis. We haven't even had the conversation of if we didn't issue bonds tax exempt, because there's no need to have that conversation, I think, at this point.
Councilmember Holloway's been patiently waiting, and I'll go to Councilmember, let's say, Councilmember Holloway, did you say?
I thought you were going to. You've been patiently waiting, but I'm going to the other guy. All right, fine. All right, so I do want to go back, and if you don't like the number, and let's all admit, we're talking $55 million, $56 million worth of projects by the end of the 6-year step. If you don't like that number, you don't adjust that number by comparison to other cities, because each city has its own utility. It's an animal particular to that city, its geography, its years, its population. You look at the project list and you decide what stays on the list and what goes off the list. I contend to you, we've reviewed this list a number of times and we haven't adjusted here recently. The projects still remain on the list. Okay, so it's ultimately in 6 years, it's $55 million worth of projects. What is really before you tonight is, do you want to do that as 3 2-year bond cycles, or do you want to do it as 2 3-year bond cycles? The difference, particularly in this case, is if you do it in the 2 years, it's the, get this right, it's the $31.5 million for 2 years. And it's the $42 million if you want to go grab 3 years worth of projects. Or 2.5, thereabouts. Well, 18, 19, 23. And again, I'm a little, you'll catch me waffling on both sides because I'm kind of 60-40 on this one. It is really, if
he was 30-70 when he came in, so.
I didn't say what was coming in. And it's, again, if you think we can execute to the projects, I have concerns there. I'm just in general bond or debt adverse. But if you want to take advantage of the interest rates as they are now, they're not going to get better from all indications, then you would move forward with this. These will not be easy decisions that we do, and the numbers will never be solid and will never be what they are now by the time we reach the end of this. Part of the job of council, you make decisions based on fuzzy data.
Best guess you can make any given time. Councilmember Lissay and then Councilmember Ross.
Yeah, I'll make my part fast. Just to follow up, is I get the math from Councilmember Mayhew. The question still becomes is which of these projects, as they've been moving around, can actually be completed during that time frame. Even if we are successful in completing projects at the rate that was done in 2017 at 9.06 million, or 9.07 if I round up, that still will put us short of the 27.37 million required, which is 85% of the $32.2 million. So we will not be able to complete those projects in time to get those done. That's assuming we have to now up our rate of completion by nearly $1 million a year to get done within that time frame. Now, I don't know the issues with whether tax exemption or not, what the penalties are, but I think there's still some question about what projects are going to be completed, which ones need to be completed, which ones on what time frame, where the time frames may slide. And I think one of the things that, and I'm not saying we go away from either one. I'm 50-50 on whether we go one way or the other. But the issue is that I think there needs to be some additional discussion at committee about not just about the numbers of dollars involved, but let's talk about schedules, let's talk about timing, let's talk about resources in terms of engineering project managers on the job. Are we going to outsource some of these to consultants? Are we not? How does that impact the timeline? All those sorts of things haven't really dove into yet. And I don't doubt that we can complete these things, but I want to see that we can. And I think the public wants to see that we can complete the work and not have it slide and have, oops, sorry, we didn't get there. And that's all I'm saying, is we need a little bit further look, which we have, which we're counting for. We're not making a decision tonight, but we need to really make sure we're going the right direction when we choose between 23 million and 32 million.
Councilmember Ross, Holloway, and then Shepherd.
Okay. I mean, I agree. We need to probably further look at the projects. But if we go with option one, then we're just going to finance basically the projects through 2019. So about this time next year, we're going to be talking about another bond.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be spending, I mean, it costs a lot of money to issue bonds.
About
So you're gonna be spending-
$120,000.
Pardon me?
About $120,000, I think, is the number that we were given by Thomas. Yes.
Right. And so it looks like our timeline from Councilmember Mayhew, that the 3 years would be June 2021. And so I think we would well spend the 32 million that we're looking at. But
Councilmember Holloway?
So in response, in Public Works, we did have a discussion in regards to speed of execution of the projects. Staff is of the contention that, again, in 2017, there were some departures. We backfilled those departures. We now have capacity, in their assertion, to go ahead and execute per the plan before us.
Well, we've doubled the engineering staff since that time, too.
So, but at that stage, my next question is, because I'd like to make a motion tonight, is council comfortable in taking a vote on 23 versus 32?
Well, just hang on a point of order. Are you making a motion, or are you just entertaining that? Councilmember Shepherd was up next.
I'm kind of asking a question, if the council is comfortable. I'm willing to put a motion forward. Are you guys comfortable to make a vote on whether the bond is $23.9 million or $32.2 million? All right.
Can I?
Proceed on with discussion.
Just
Deanna, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I think what you're talking about is the dollar amount for the project fund. The bond issuance, the not to exceed amount for the bond ordinance will actually be a higher number, because there are the costs of issuance, there's the reserve fund deposit, and there's other just costs associated with the the marketing of the bonds. So I think that the 32 versus the other number is the project fund deposit.
Another reason why we aren't ready to make a decision, because we don't know what the total number is going to be.
Right. Councilmember Shepherd, then Councilmember Mayhew.
Okay, one of the things I had a question about is on the title of this thing was a bond ordinance for water and sewer revenue bonds. It doesn't mention stormwater, and I didn't understand why stormwater wasn't part of the title. But also, going back to comparing this level of borrowing to other cities, I think that it would be great if our city could find some comparable city that has done this level of spending, whether it be a slightly different animal or not. I feel that this is just so inconsistent. I think the last time that we borrowed a significant amount of money, it was apart from the ban, was $8 million. So we're going from $8 million to over 30, 40, $50 million. So it's a quantum leap. And I don't feel that we've really explained why we've had such a large jump in how much we're borrowing.
Deanna, did you want to respond to a couple of?
I'd be happy to. So in terms of the bond title, the nomenclature that was used is consistent with the currently outstanding water sewer bonds of the city. Water sewer, which are actually, there's a pledge of water sewer storm utility funds, but the bond title, there's really nothing, it's really up to the city how to describe the bonds. Some utilities or some cities like to call them combined water sewer storm. Some just call them combined utilities. And so the title just reflects the nomenclature that's been used for the last 10 years or so, even though water, sewer, and storm from a contractual basis are in fact pledged to the repayment of the bonds.
Deanna, would the nomenclature be water, sanitary, and storm sewers? Because you had sanitary and storm are separate sewer systems.
Right, and the way that the bond ordinance refers to them is water, sewer, and storm, but we can certainly revise that. It's mainly shorthand, lowercase sewer.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. But anyway, go ahead.
Councilmember Mayhew and then Sunwell.
So, let me try and explain these numbers another way that I think about them that I think is really important. Right now, of this 32 million, we've already spent 10. 10's already spent. So 32 goes down to 22. We just take 10 and repay the bond anticipation note from. Yes.
I'm sorry, what just happened?
I'm told that I'm wrong, but I'm not, so I don't know what to do now.
Okay, no, let you finish, go ahead.
No, there's no need for me to say things that are wrong.
Have we committed, we've paid $7.1 million out of the ban.
Currently, we have 16 million in the ground that's going on.
We have
So-
16 million worth of projects committed.
Committed, right, right. So going through.
Dan, how
that-
much is the ban? He's asking about how much money we've got in the ban, that's the bond anticipation note. How much have we got committed from the ban only, not the cash?
Right, it's a $10 million ban.
So
Okay.
you're
That's
telling
what
me
he's
we
speaking
have,
Okay.
you have $16 million projects in the ground, but we only have $10
All
million
right, so please tell Councilmember
available?
Mayhew he was correct.
My apologies, you were correct then. Looking at the full.
Councilmember
But hold
Mayhew-
your thought, because I was getting to
Okay.
you next. Stay
Councilmember
around.
Yeah, please continue.
Of the 32, by June, 10 of it is spent. Okay? So 10 just goes and pays off a note that's due in December that we have to pay off by December. So that we're really only at this 32 number, we're only going to have 22. Now, as our Director of Public Works just stole my line, 16 million of those contracts are already signed. They're already underway. Did I get it right, sir? So that means we can sign about another 6 million in contracts, and we're out of money. So I don't think you're going to be here talking about more money in a year. I think you're going to be here talking about more money in more like 6 months. Because are we really going to sign contracts when we don't have any funding yet? And so if we're going to be here in 6 months, my goodness, interest rates will have moved. We will pay a second, we'll pay and by the way, to the question of the amount of the bond, I don't think that council was telling us that we don't know the amount. I think we do. We know it's in the schedule here. She was just trying to be, some of the amounts get determined at closing. So I think that's all she was saying. I don't think there's anything not known about those costs. So in 6 months, we could be talking about another 120,000 plus a much higher interest rate. And so I think what we have the chance here to really, without repeating myself, I'll just say this is not some amount that we're going to start signing contracts on years from now. This is stuff we're going to be signing contracts on 6 months from now. So there's a question of how quickly it will complete. And to Councilmember Holloway's point, we've heard from city staff that we lost a bunch of staff in 17, so the rate of expenditure slowed way down. We've not only replaced those staff now, we've actually doubled the size of that staff.
What's that numbers of people? Sorry.
Yeah, can we get those numbers,
What are the
Mr.
numbers? I mean,
Saxberg?
if we
or-
went from 1 to 2, that's one thing. If we went from 10 to 20, that's a whole different discussion.
Todd Saxberg, Operations Manager, for the record. Your question was?
How many engineers did you have on staff before you lost people in 17? How many do you now have on staff? And I'll just add, it's my understanding you have an intent to even add further as you ramp up. Maybe you could give us those 3 numbers.
Okay. 2017, we had Kamal and Brian Coleman working for us. Kamal went somewhere else, and then since that time, we've added.
Todd, just the numbers real quick. Number of FTEs.
We had 2
2
in
to 3.
2017.
2 to
How
3.
many do we have currently now?
3. We're hiring one right now.
So we're going from 2 to 4.
Just so we're clear, one was vacant. Kamal's position was vacant, so we really had essentially one person working on projects, if I remember correctly. We're up to 3 now.
All right, you went from 1 to 3, and then you also have an idea of adding, is it 1 or 2 more?
Well, of course, this was approved, we wouldn't operate in a vacuum. If we saw at the outset there was any indication of slowing down, and we talk about this every Wednesday at staff, and we have a CIP tracker in-house. We'll talk about this every week, and if there's any indication we're slowing down, of course, we'll bring someone else on.
Todd, can you explain that we expect as part of these contracts, will we have design engineers working with us as well as part of that FTE count? It won't be obviously city staff, but they'll be obviously third party.
Correct. A good portion of these, we don't really do design here at all. Our engineers manage the projects and move them around. And one good thing is the list has grown larger recently. We used to be just with Petite for design. Now we have the option of using RH2. Jeff's been in the field a long time, and he has 3 or 4 engineering companies that he uses. Aspect, he's brought before you. KPG. We just have a lot more options to choose from than just all going to Petite. It's obvious that if we went that direction, that's also, in addition to not being 100% right, it would slow things down to just use one option. So we would definitely move towards all the engineering firms that you've been hearing about the past 7 months from us.
So just to close out my point then, I was just trying to make the point that I think this is a lot more committed than it might look like when we talk about the years that we actually pay the bills, which is what we're talking about when we say 20 and 21. I think really we're going to spend this money, we're going to spend it in roughly this time frame, given what we're hearing. So I would really encourage us not to postpone this. And I think there are a lot of issues that have been raised about how Parks and Public Works Committee perhaps is overseen, or maybe we as the council are overseeing this big project and some of the details we ought to be looking at and questioning and being updated on. But I would encourage us to set that aside and focus on the notion that there really isn't any question that we're going to spend this $42 million. Let's borrow in an advantageous way, save our ratepayers a significant amount of money. That's what I would encourage us to not delay any further.
I think the council members taking a huge advantage of the next 2 weeks. Oh, Councilmember Sinwall, I'll get you next. Taking advantage of the next 2 weeks before action is taken this item would hugely benefit to satisfy their concerns about execution and delivery, to go out and tour and take a look at some of these projects that are underway if you haven't seen them yet. I think it would make an impression. Councilmember Sinwall.
So a couple things. Councilmember Shepherd asked a great question as to why we're having such a big jump, and I would propose that the answer to that is pretty simple. We've punted on these projects for 20 years. So we're done kicking cans down the road. We can blame whoever we want to blame, prior administrations, prior councils, whatever we want to do. But this infrastructure is rotting in the ground, and there is no other way to go about this. So yeah, it sucks that it's 45 or 50 million, whatever that number ends up being. And that's a big number compared to what we've done in the past. But we've also done squat in the past when it comes to dealing with the downtown infrastructure compared to what we have left to do. So that's my thought on that. My final thought is I hate being persuaded by an accountant, especially one that's not mine. But I actually have a much better, I feel, understanding of that. I'm not sure why we would not vote on this tonight. I haven't heard any objection as to whether or not these projects at some point will be done and will need to be funded. And the longer we wait, the higher interest rates go, the longer this takes. I don't know how long it takes to get this ball into motion. But I'm prepared to vote for whatever we want to call it, option B, the higher amount, and I'm ready to do that tonight.
Councilmember Lassay.
I might have been interested in voting tonight. However, it was introduced as being just a second look and with action on May 14th, and we don't have the bond, the agenda bill doesn't include the amount. So there's no understanding of what that's going to be.
That was the potential motion tonight, was at least to amend the agenda bill to include the amount.
Can you tell me what the amount's going to be, including borrowing costs, bond disclosures, carrying the bond early, whatever those things are? Can you give me a number? I don't think we can.
Or Rob, yeah.
Staff was asked to have that.
Well,
ready.
I would also suggest I don't think you have to arrive at an exact number. Well, I'm sorry, if you want to vote on it tonight, you do.
Yeah.
I was thinking at least you could vote on the alternative, which alternative, and then the staff can.
Sure, Rob Orton, interim finance director. The number is $35,600,000, which includes the $32,200,000 project costs and issuance.
So that's all in.
And the reason it's not in the agenda bill is a bonehead move on my part.
Well,
Actually, it was the way it was introduced, just Jody explained it to me, but.
and I was being a stick in the mud on your behalf. It was introduced with a blank. I'm not going to let it change until we change it as a council.
They understand that, Councilman.
Okay. I have difficulty with being told a number and then 5 minutes later saying, okay. I don't think that's proper procedure. I think that's.
Well,
you want to review the detail, or?
I'd like to see the detail. I'd like to see if we got duplicate projects or projects that are being funded through grants or things that are not a part of it. We need to look at it.
Julia, if you could please, Rob, do we have a document that the staff could throw up that itemizes the additional costs?
I don't know if we do, but I can make a try at it. So the issuance costs $130,000. You don't want to hear this?
I don't think they want to hear you rattle them off.
I'm sorry. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to do this.
Don't need to. Let's, in the next Public Works and F&A, let's talk around the total $42 million project list.
Right,
assuming a $32.2 million bond and other stuff, and tell us the rest of the numbers.
All right, Councilmember Holland, I'm sorry, I was indulging you. Councilmember Sunwall still had the floor. I was trying to be responsive to a request of a couple of council members of possibly entertaining that tonight. So, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lissay had the floor.
He fell asleep.
It got pulled away from me from other people, but the point is that I have serious difficulty with council making a decision based upon information we've received in the last 5 minutes on an issue that is potentially $35.6 million. I don't think that's responsible.
Right. I agree, but I will say that the detail is in the council report, which you've had tonight.
So, if I may,
The budget section.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Sunwell, Councilmember Shepherd, we had her hand up.
So one of the questions I have is of the spend that we've done for utilities in 2017, how much of that was actually identified by a capital improvement plan project number?
I mean, I assume all of it. We don't.
Todd Saxberg, Operations Manager, for the record. Can I hear your question again, please?
Of the spend that we had, that we are saying we spent towards utilities for capital improvement, how much of that is identified as has a project ID number in the capital improvement plan?
All of them?
All of it?
Mm-hmm. With the exception of Canyon Springs, which wasn't anticipated, I assume.
Of course.
That's
right.
Not on the list.
That's all of it.
You have 17 there,
Councilmember Sunwell. I'm
So-
sorry, Councilmember Shepherd, did you have any other comments on that?
No, that was it.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sunwell?
So we have a lot to get through tonight. I think what's become pretty clear is I don't think we would get an accurate vote tonight. So what I would like to do is pull it back to the Public Works and Parks and Public Works Committee. We'll finalize everything in committee on actually, do we meet?
It's Parks and Public Works has been addressing the capital list, and F&A's been handling the.
So kick it back to F&A.
For the finance piece,
I
yeah.
know, both committees should discuss, but
For
FAA
the,
has
for the
agenda.
finance piece next week.
Yeah.
And we'll come back with a fully vetted, real amount in there that we can vote on.
I'm
Not that
clearly
requires-
hearing a majority arise, though, that suggests we should be tipping toward the alternative 2 and preparing documentation with that number used. Well, we'll vet that in F&A. I'm sorry, Councilmember Mayhew.
There's a point of order. Can I just, under our council procedures, can we or can we not vote for this tonight?
You absolutely can vote for it tonight if you'd like, yeah.
So the belief that we have to wait is not, in fact, true. We could vote for this tonight.
That's correct.
The second thing I'd say, well, that was my point of order. I have a question. Was my turn?
It's your turn.
My turn?
I didn't see any other hands up, so go ahead if you'd like.
All right. The amount actually has been absolutely vetted in F&A committee. So.
And this is in the packet, as Rob
And
said.
it is in the packet, and it's not going to change unless we change the number for some reason. So the only reason I would see for us to send it back to committee is if we're wanting to relook at the number. And where I thought we were, and certainly in my mind where I'm at, is I have some questions about the capital plan as it stands now, but I don't have, you know, might it be $1 million or $2 million off between the years? I think it might one or two of the projects be missing some soft costs of $1 million or $2 million, maybe. But we're talking about funding $42 million of a $55 million plan. So so that doesn't sway me on my readiness to go forward. And I don't think that getting any more precise about that CIP plan is going to change my view anyway. Now, maybe some of you are at a different point, but if you can see that we're going to spend $42 million by roughly the end of 2020, then I don't think that talking about it any further is going to make us feel any different about it. So I would encourage us to move forward tonight.
Councilmember Jeans, you definitely have the floor. Round robin goes to you.
So I don't know whether anybody else fits in this category, but when we talk about 3 looks and make a decision after the 3rd look, I'm not on the F&A committee and I'm not on the Parks and Public Works committee, so I'm really kind of behind the ball. So I need some time so I can get to a point where I can vote. Otherwise, I feel like I have to abstain or wonder what my other options are. But so I'd like to put it off for myself. But then again, if you guys want to vote for it, then I just won't participate in that.
So you would abstain with a vote tonight, yeah. Is that because and back to the Councilmember Mayhew's question about council rules and procedures, this 2-touch, 3-touch rule is more of a rules of engagement than an ordinance on rules and procedures. So it's not, that's why I said it's hard and fast, and you can certainly vote tonight. But I suspect Councilmember Jeans, you were sort of operating from that language and perhaps didn't give the time to fully brief yourself and be prepared for a vote tonight.
Point of order.
Yes.
I thought we couldn't abstain.
Oh, Council. Oh.
Can't.
Under
It's an affirmation.
Under our rules of procedure,
I'll defer to
abstaining is a
our
vote, is a
parliamentarian.
yes vote.
Yeah.
Well,
You guys are doing your homework.
Right.
Huh?
But
no, one can abstain, but it has an effect, as I think Councilmember Mayhew just correctly stated.
Yeah, Councilmember Mayhew.
So I, having heard Councilmember Jean's point that he's not yet ready, that's a reason I think that if we're not ready, we should wait. But I then wonder how we will get ready. And so I wonder if the thing to do is to schedule before our next council meeting, maybe we should schedule a roundtable discussion so that all of us can actually get through this with whatever time we need. Because otherwise I don't know how we, splitting up between 2 committees that may or may not talk about the same things and have different subsets of us present. I'm worried about how we actually get to a decision. I'd like us to do something that will help us actually get there.
Well, I know to Bob's point, you'd be the only one that haven't been on some of the committees addressing this issue. And so perhaps it's just you, Bob, coming in and having a sit down with Rob and Dan or myself. And
That's what I was going to say.
Great, okay.
Well, actually, Council Member Shepherd is not on either of those committees we've been discussing as well.
Councilmember Shepherd's been sitting in and listening to all those conversations at those committees, though.
Sitting and listening is different than participating in the conversation.
Okay. I'm happy to do whatever the council like. If they want to do a roundtable, it's
If we want, we could make the first part of F&A a true committee, the whole and roundtable next week.
2 weeks.
Just for clarification, there's
2 weeks.
Extra week next week.
No, he was saying next week.
No, 2 weeks. You get next week off.
Oh, right.
I forgot to. Just used to being here every Monday.
yeah. Councilmember Shepherd, did you have a point?
No.
Bob, would that be amenable to you to make F&A?
Every
Tuesday?
council member is free to come to the F&A meeting. I think what Councilmember Holloway's suggesting is open it to participation of all the council members, not just there to observe as a member of the public at the next FNA. Kind of make it a special council meeting, the FNA meeting.
It'd be Tuesday, May 8th.
Could you make that meeting, Bob?
Well, I could, but I think the rest of the council are probably ready to move, and I'm not. I can make that up in a week on my own with meeting with the finance department, the engineering department. So I would suggest that to accommodate me, you all go have a round robin.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I'll
take it back.
All right. So I'm not hearing a desire to have a round table or an open committee meeting or special council meeting then. Okay. Any other discussion? I guess one last item I want to add on this too, going to the comparable issue, is during the years that I served as vice president, president, and past president of SCEA, I visited at least 38 of the cities in King County, most of those at least 2 times. And to Councilmember Sunwall's point, I can assure you that we're a profoundly unique community. Not only this, it's rare to find communities around King County that are full-service communities, and by virtue of the fact that we're sort of an island we are an island in the rural area, we are a soup-to-nuts full-service community that does everything: police, fire, sewer, water. Whereas a lot of these cities have some combination of water districts, sewer districts, contracted police or fire services, and so forth. And so that makes us profoundly unique. And the second part is also again, to Councilmember Sunwall's point, a very unique history in that we have an historical downtown that for several decades was neglected, where the infrastructure has gone into a state of disrepair, and much of it on the verge of failure. As Councilmember Mayhew alluded to earlier, that's the risk. If we continue to neglect it, we could have failing lines underground that are very expensive to fix. And that goes hand in hand with ridge infrastructure that was built in a regular collapse time frame. And so it's kind of a perfect storm of what everybody considered new infrastructure coming up to its first maintenance cycles, which we have had a lot of foresight to prepare for, but it's trying to get our hands around some of that historic infrastructure too, and finally get the resources to grapple with that. That's been the challenge, as Councilmember Sunwall talked about earlier. So we would be very, very hard pressed to find a community that would have that kind of similarity on all those points. So, any further discussion, Council? Councilmember Holloway?
Just a nitnoid. River Street and Park Avenue bank stabilization. Footnote on that is it's to be reimbursed by King County Water Land Resources. Can we take it out of the calculations to be discussed next week?
I think you want to ask your fellow council members that question.
Mayor,
or let's have some comment from the staff.
Can we discuss that in committee?
Okay.
And just one comment, the negotiation with King County of the interlocal for that project is ongoing. And the draft that they provided initially had a hard cap of reimbursable costs and provisions that stated that the city couldn't be reimbursed any amount above that. And our request to them was to fix that language to make it clear that because they're going to be approving the design and the contract award, et cetera, that it should be 100% reimbursable. And they said, we'll get you a language to that effect. We haven't seen it yet. So we're working towards what Councilmember Holloway was just describing. I don't know, I can't tell you with certainty that we're there yet.
All right, so at this time, there's no further discussion. Councilmember Ross wisely asked, knowing that tonight's meeting would go a little long, if at about this time we could take about is a 5-minute recess suffice? Or?
Sure.
Okay, we'll do a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
We'll be back here at about 8:42.
Lost everybody.
With that, we'll move on to reports. Parks and Public Works Committee, Agenda Bill 18052, Mount Si High School, I'm sorry, that one's been moved. Agenda Bill 18053, Resolution 1441, authorizing submitting an application for Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program grant funding assistance to the Recreation and Conservation Office for the Centennial Fields All-Inclusive Playground Project.
All right, fun stuff. Grant applications to the Recreation and Conservation Office, Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program require applicants to submit a resolution supporting and authorizing the WWRP application. The Centennial Fields All-Inclusive Playground would provide play facilities for all children regardless of ability, age, or comfort level. The $500,000 grant requires a 50% match. Match funds are to be provided from a $182,500 city allocation. Fundraising and future grants, if awarded, grant funds would be available in June of 2019. Move to approve Resolution 1441 authorizing submitting an application for Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program grant funding assistance to the Recreation and Conservation Office for the Centennial Fields All-Inclusive Playground Project, number 18-1745, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18053 as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Any discussion, Council? Or questions? Councilmember Ross and then Sunwell.
So in the staff report, it talks about how Snoqualmie Elementary School is next door, housing and special education, and so we see that some of the elementary students will be using the playground as well. Will the Snoqualmie School District be helping fund some of it, or?
Larry White, Snoqualmie Park Superintendent. We are in conversations with the school district. We're not certain what their participation is going to be financing-wise, but they're going to help in other ways: advertising, promotion, helping with other grant opportunities.
Good.
But I am trying to get a meeting with Ryan Stokes to further that conversation.
Great.
So,
Councilmember Sunwell.
So, question for you. I'm super excited about this park. I wish it wasn't going to take so long. But two questions. First of all, when does if we're going to get a $500,000 grant, that means we need to come up with $500,000. We already have 182 set aside, correct?
Correct.
When does that money have to be achieved? Is it a commitment to have it, and then we just won't get their money until we meet the 500, or is there an expiration date on this?
I'll have to defer to Nicole on that part.
The grant master.
Yep, the grant master.
That's different than grandmaster. I have one more question for you before we go to that, though. So, if we have a user of a city facility that is a consistent user, forget whether it's reserved or things like that, but we have a consistent user of a city facility, is there an expectation, and I think you know where I'm going with this, if this Snoqualmie Valley School District is going to consistently use this park for their special education or whatever needs that they have given their proximity to the park, would there not be an expectation or even a requirement that such an entity would kick in, given that they're, the wear and tear, all that kind of stuff? I mean, I want to be a good neighbor, but at the same time, I think it's also, I'm elected by citizens of Snoqualmie, not the school district. So I'm just trying to make sure that we are, I guess, for lack of a better term, taxing those who would be using it in a disproportionate manner.
The only way I could answer that would be my own personal opinion. And the way we operate right now is we consider all of our parks public parks. And so they're open to any user. Now, I suppose we could look at something more on a joint use agreement platform, but I really don't have any experience in that particular question, Sean.
Okay. Now the grant master.
So just to answer the question of when expenditure would be expected, I believe recommendations for award happen through this summer, but we don't actually have to certify for match, that we have match, until I think May of next year. And usually RCO grants have to be approved by the legislature, so we won't even really get the money until June of next year. And then they usually have a 2-year funding expectation with a possibility usually for automatic renewal if you're showing good progress. So we have a good amount of time to acquire additional funds, both up to that certification point and following it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Mayhew.
So I just want to understand the procedures that we follow. So are we, we're considering approving the submission of a grant application and authorizing the mayor to sign that grant application? Is that what we're doing tonight?
It's authorization to sign the resolution. The resolution format, which is very long, is something that RCO requires that a city submit in order to proceed with an application. So it's just, you know, basically they're knowing that both the mayor and the city council know the application is coming. They're aware of the grant, and they require a signed resolution to signify that that's happened. So,
So they just want assurances that the administration hasn't applied for it. Council doesn't know anything about it, only to find out after they award the grant, the council says, what are you talking about? We don't want to do this.
yeah, since it's a statewide funder, I think they've had issues with that in the past.
Okay, so I didn't ask my question well. Let me try it a different way. Assuming whatever is being requested tonight happens, does this come back to the city council at some point in the future for acceptance of a grant if we're successful?
Yes.
So this doesn't authorize us to actually receive the grant or to spend any money. It merely authorizes us to submit a grant application.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, council? All right, thank you both. And before I forget later, happy birthday, Nicole.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. I'm trying to, which committee does there was an agenda bill out of the,
okay. 054 would go to Parks and Public Works.
I'm sorry?
054 was pulled off consent.
Right, where should that go, I guess is what I'm asking. Is that a park one?
That's a park one.
So why don't we just take it up now so I don't forget it? Agenda Bill 18054, Resolution 1442, authorizing submitting an application for Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program grant funding assistance to the Recreation Conservation Office for the Riverview Park Acquisitions and Renovation Project.
Grant.
Number 181756.
Grant applications to the Recreation and Conservation Office, Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program require applicants to submit a resolution supporting and authorizing WWRP application. The proposed Riverview Park grant would be implemented in the Snoqualmie River Walk Phase 1 project, providing park and trail improvements to adjacent acquisitions. The grant requires a 50% match. Past acquisition expenditures meet this grant requirement. Move to approve Resolution 1442, authorizing submitting an application for Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program grant funding assistance to the Recreation and Conservation Office for the Riverview Park Acquisitions and Renovation Project number 18-1756, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18054 as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Any discussion, council? And again, this is a similar approval of a grant application. Councilmember Mayhew.
So I'm confused and hoping either council members or staff could help me understand this. I'm confused by the references in this to both Riverwalk Phase 1, which is a park that doesn't exist yet, and which is a project that I understand is stalled, and then reference to Riverfront Park. And so I've tried to get to the bottom. Are we talking about taking properties that the city's acquired and adding them to Riverfront Park? I just don't understand what's happening here.
Yes, we are talking about taking properties we've bought and adding them to Riverview Park.
Riverview Park.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That exists.
Yes, it's an existing park.
Riverview Park.
Riverview. And this project, so as we've been designing the Riverwalk Phase 1 project, we had this grant in the past, and we basically were told we had to reapply because the acquisitions took too long. So that is what we're doing. So this is something we've been designing since 2016. We're coming in to get the money that we had planned to spend already. Now that we've bought the acquisitions, we don't expect there to be any more stalls, and hope to move forward to expend it under the Riverwalk Phase 1 construction project.
So Nicole, would it be fair to say that, and I assume we're talking about the two adjacent, I guess it would be to the west, downstream?
They're actually north of Riverview Park,
Is that downstream or upstream?
downstream.
Okay, that's, okay. So those two acquisitions that we most recently made, you're basically just, instead of calling them just nothing, you're just incorporating them into Riverview Park.
Yes.
You're just calling them Riverview Park rather
Well,
than vacant land.
they will actually, I mean, demolitions will hopefully happen this summer, but they will actually be integrated into the park space. So you'll see the houses come down, you'll see improvements go up, trail connections, potential expansion of the play area, fencing. So, I mean, they are planned to be incorporated in the park and with trail connections.
And so like the one we just talked about, this is authorizing the mayor and you to resubmit an application, at which point we would theoretically be granted it. We would have another conversation about accepting it, and we go from there.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Councilmember Mayhew, then Councilmember Ross, and then Jeans.
So what, if I'm understanding you, the plan always was to enlarge Riverview Park.
Yes.
With this area. So this is a long-standing plan. In fact, we once applied for grants to do this, and just because of the time it took to acquire the property, we find ourselves where we are, and now we're just trying to execute that plan that we've always had.
Yes.
So what I'm confused about is why are we, let me explain why I'm asking this. I have the understanding that Riverwalk Park project is stalled out, and I don't want this, I don't want to get into something that's stalled out. So the why is this being referred to as Riverwalk Phase 1? Why isn't this just a Riverview Park thing on its own that we're doing?
So the idea so we've been expending design funds. We've been designing this park already as part of the Riverwalk Phase 1 project. When we go to construction, we will build it under the Riverwalk Phase 1 construction. The way I'm writing the grant is very central to this location for 2 to 3 reasons. One, RCO is a very restrictive grant, and Riverwalk Phase 1 project is a very complex project, and so I'm trying to keep it very simple and compartmentalized for the grant reviewers. The other issue is it's not, the Riverwalk project isn't stalled out. It is progressing, but it is progressing at a slower rate than we'd hoped. So,
which I call stalled out, but okay.
That's fair. But the other item too is if we continue to have tensions and issues, I want this to remain a whole piece, that if you somehow wanted to build this sooner, it would be whole in and of itself. But we will achieve cost efficiencies by bidding this as one project.
Okay, so I think we're saying the same thing. What I was driving at with my questions is, so I have this perception that something's stalled out.
Okay.
And I don't want this to get attached to something I think is stalled out. So I think I'm saying the same thing, which is this a standalone thing that's simply going to move forward as we get the funding? Is that the intent? I hear you saying you're hoping to get some efficiencies by including it with something else. But if the something else isn't happening timely, the intent is to move forward with this?
If council wishes to make that decision, the grant is written in a way that would allow that to happen.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Ross and then Jeans.
I was just curious, these are both great programs, this and the playground. So when will you find out about the grant?
End of summer, I think. RCO, the application process includes usually this is almost a pre-application. There's refinement. There's an in-person presentation, vetting, then recommendation to state legislature, and they can also change things. So hopefully this year I'll have a good sense of our chances.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jeans and then Councilmember Shepherd.
So Nicole, I can see the two lots that we've acquired to the north will be part of this expansion of Riverview Park. I'm wondering about that, I'll call it a triangle from the northernmost house right up to River Street. There is a sort of a long, narrow triangle there. Will that be developed perhaps earlier than we start to work on Riverview, the Riverwalk?
You're talking about that elongated triangle right before the curve of the
Yes.
road? That is county-owned property. The plan currently, yes, it's the record office, they bought it. The plan right now is to enter into a sort of long-term lease or have an easement to have a trail that goes across what's left of that property. The legal lines of that property, probably a substantial portion of that is in the water. But the plan for that area is conversion of the road to a one-way road, which will also provide us more of sort of the current road area to do trail improvements on.
And is part of this the bank restoration at Riverview Park? Is that included in this?
Not in the grant as it currently stands, because we haven't executed the agreement for that yet, but we're hoping to bring an agreement for that to you at basically the next probably Public Works Committee meeting and your next council meeting. You'll see that agreement come through. And so at that point where we have some certainty both from the council and with King County, we can begin to incorporate that in the project.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So I'm looking at the Riverview Park expansion design enlargement, and it's talking about a shoreline reinforcement and revetment repair. Can you describe what is going on with exactly with that piece of it?
Well, and so I'll go into it and then we can talk about if I've addressed it. So right now the issue with that bank is there was a bank collapse several years ago where, if I understand the physics of the river adequately, basically there was some undercutting at the edge of the river. You had fall off from the bank and exposure of utilities even underneath the road. We did an emergency repair where they basically dumped some big rock in the river, but over time the steepness of that rock could have the same function where it's undercut by the river and causing another collapse. So what King County is interested in doing and what we are interested in doing is by conversion to a one-way road, you actually gain some higher terrain to reduce the slope and reduce the risk of that undercutting and bank collapse. Basically using the same footprint that's in the river now, then changing the topography towards the top of the bank. So that's what King County has discussed with us, and we think it sounds like a good idea.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Nicole.
Sure.
If there's no further discussion at this time, is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action?
Oh, we got one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Mayhew.
I just had one more question, which is we track on this Riverfront Reach acquisitions. Did I say it right? That's a
Yes,
thing?
that's something
Okay.
we've been working on, Riverfront.
So
yeah.
where we count matching dollars for grants directed towards that program, is any of the match that's going on here going to deduct from amounts that you've been tracking over there, or those are separate
No,
costs?
you can match both.
But from the same source, I'm saying. So will this match reduce match that that you've been tracking as available for Riverfront Reach acquisitions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there's no further discussion from the council, is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing nobody move forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Council, if you don't mind, I noticed that our representative from Northwest Landscaping has been waiting out here patiently, and given that it might be another half hour more since we get there, and let him head out. No one else is waiting around these other agenda bills. We're going to move to Agenda Bill 18061 if there's no other objection. Resolution 1447 awarding Parks and Public Works Contract 2018 to 2020 Landscape Maintenance Agreement.
Oh, that's me, sorry. Again. On January 23rd, 2018, the city received open bids, opened bids, the only one being from Northwest Landscape Services in an amount of $685,730.80 each year for a 3-year contract. City Council Also authorize and approve the additional items to be placed as bid alternatives for this bidding process. The 5 bid alternatives are Large Parks, Community, Carmichael, Azalea, Swenson, Sports Field, Fisher Creek, Riverview, and Centennial, Water Division sites, wastewater lift station sites, FEMA purchased floodplain lots, and Park and Public Works facilities. Move to approve Resolution 1447 awarding a Parks and Public Works contract 2018 to 2020 landscape maintenance agreement and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18061 as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Any discussion, council? Dan, why don't we just cue it up to you, and if you, looks like you got a little report to give, and then we'll kick it back to council for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to quickly go through this, not going to read each slide to you. We went through this in a couple of committees, but I do want to concentrate on, towards the end, per the committee's request, we put some changes in here for you, and I wanted to walk through some of those. New contract considerations that we had for the background, request for proposals, expiring contract, what their costs, and some basic services. We had the contract considerations, what we looked at, and my apologies. This is Keith, say your last name. Camerano. He's with NLS. He's been here for quite a while. Yeah, I beat that name up all the time. But him and then his staff within the city, they also work with the ROA. So he has basically the entire city, which is very nice. It's you don't have to wonder who did what. We just call Keith or his contacts in the field. So the contract considerations we had, we did throw some alternates in there.
Hey, Dan.
Discussing.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to stem questions that will come, and just take it as the beginning, can you just explain briefly why you believe there was only one bid submitted for this?
Yes, we're going to get to that.
Oh,
we have a
never mind.
slide.
Okay.
Per your request in our committee, actually. Alternates. Oh, we had alternates working with the committees, looking at staff, and working with the Parks Department, Larry White and his crew. We had some alternates we added in there to see what kind of pricing we can get. We increased some of the neighborhood parks. Typically, NLS was going through and just mowing. Now we've added the beds and the edging, garbage, things of that nature. So it's really, we're looking for time is what we're looking for within this contract. And basic services. You see all the additional ones we've added, like Tolkien Roundabout, and there's been quite a bit of various right-of-way that's been added as we grow in the city. This is a map trying to highlight and show you where some of those areas are. Alternate A had the large parks, B had water division sites, and then C, D, and E accordingly. Add notices, give you some dates and time frames. We had a couple of hiccups along the way. We extended the extension as far as the hiccups were just some of the questions that came from folks that inquired. So we added some time to it. Why one bid? So that was Druss's. Distance from the Seattle market, transportation, mobility, and a lot of times our contract is too large for the smaller contractors, and we're too small for the larger contractors, if that makes any sense. NLS has a niche. They also bought up their competition. Signature Landscape was the original contractor we had back in '09. NLS came on board 2013. So in that, from 13 until today, they've now merged. And then we had 3 bidders. Oh, there, I'm jumping myself. Signature NLS, and then Total Landscape I couldn't find. I tried to locate them. I don't know if they went out of business or where they're at, but I couldn't get any response out of them because they were bidding us in 2013. So, yes, sir.
So Dan, you told, I think you, if I understood you correctly, you said that you were, you had to redo the bid or extend the bid because there were questions coming back from people, I assume, potential bidders. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if you had other bidders asking you questions and then once you clarified, did they just withdraw themselves from,
Yeah,
they just never submitted a bid?
Did not receive any numbers from them. We called them. We said, hey, do we need to go back out to bid? Where are you at? And they said, we just showed it's too large of a contract.
Okay.
We said, and they said, thank you, and moved on.
And
Bob?
Dan, if I can jump in just for a second. So just for clarification for the council, while public work construction contracts are in most instances required to be bid, this is what the statute refers to as ordinary maintenance, which is an exception to the bid requirement. So a contract of this size, periodically, it's prudent to go out to the market, but it's not legally required to bid it at all. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Go ahead, Dan.
So here we have bid results and showing us the couple of the options that we had within the bid. Basic contract, what we asked here going through the committees, these questions were raised. So basic contract, you know, with everything in, because we have extended right-of-way. And as we grow as a city with Tokel Roundabout, the northern bioswales, I mean, there's a variety of things. And by the way, if what was included in your packet, as Councilmember Holloway will tell you, I'm a spreadsheet person. That's what I do. So if you guys do have questions, I do go off of this quite a bit. So hopefully you guys had looked at that before tonight and we can visit that. That explains quite a bit of, I believe, as Councilmember Holloway had asked, what was it and what is it today? So it kind of works out nice when you look at that spreadsheet. The $460,000 option, we were asked, you know, here's the added basic services that you can see here. We're now at full build out with all 52 stormwater sites, so there were 6 additional ones, and we added garbage. Pond mowing, we doubled as an NPDS Phase 2 and with the complaints. And then we also extended beyond where the fencing is. A lot of times we had 3 to 5 feet outside the fencing, but areas, you know, between the sidewalk and the fencing was much larger than the 3 to 5 feet, 12 to 15 feet in that instance. So we added that in there as well, so we weren't going to the same location that NLS would potentially be going to. 3 additional miles of right-of-way from, let's see, Mill Pond Road, Reinig, Bulch, 384th, both sides of SR 202 were all added. We did add community center in there, and then historic business district, all with 460 plus 15 FEMA lots. What we tried to do was Larry and his staff initially mowed the FEMA lots on a weekly or every other week basis, and we're finding as the city was growing and our staff wasn't, we needed time. So they kind of went to alternate months, and we were getting a lot of complaints from the residents. The FEMA lots are within the neighborhoods, they're adjacent to homeowners, and people just don't want to look at it. So we've added it to this contract, and our request is, hopefully you guys will agree and go to the 460 amount is what we're requesting. 477 option adds utility sites. It was B through E on the alternates and includes not only FEMA lots, water utility, wastewater, and then the Public Works facility garage, the mill site, the mill pond, our garage site with the wastewater plant, North Wellfield, and the Parks Public Works facility. 685 is all in, so yeah, there that is. Somebody had asked if we're getting a good price or not. So when you look at this, you see in 2017, Parkway, for example, just to pull one of these out, was at 80,000, and NLS went down to 74. And all 3 pricing, 2018, 19, and 20, same exact price, no increase each year. So Keith really did a great job. He wanted this contract, which, by the way, he lives here, so he owns it. He's a resident, and he's done a fantastic job working with us and going through the contract. The facility landscape maintenance, you can see here to show you another example. Are we getting a good price or not? You can see here, basic versus the contract, but this includes the community center. So for, do that math,
7.
Councilmember Mayhew, whatever that difference is there, we're getting the community center included in that, which again buys us time, and that's what we, I keep sounding like a broken record, but we need that. Added value option going through the committees. Here's what I just ran through. Those are all the added values. And then if we were, 396 is what we were paying in 2017, but again, we grew. The SR2 collector roads and right-of-way, we would have to add to that 396 anyway. We would have to add the Mill Pond Road because that's now a city street. We have to add Tokel Roundabout in the northern bioswales. It's all us. So that 396 would have gone up regardless. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or Keith is here as well to address any of your concerns.
Councilmember Stonewall.
Yes, sir.
So you can go back to that last slide. So my rough math, I'll leave Mayhew to do the exact math. But from what I'm seeing is for $64,000 extra, meaning above and beyond the last contract we just completed, right?
Yes.
We are getting those 6 bullet points. Is it that easy? We were paying $396. We're going to pay $460. That's a difference of about $64,000. And those are the extra things we're getting for $64,000?
Yes and no. The 396 would have gone up regardless because of the additional items of Tokel Roundabout, the northern bioswales, the additional right-of-way for the SR2 development, your Mill Pond, all the areas that we incorporated within city limits, we've added. So that 396 would have gone up regardless. I probably should have done the math, but so that's 64. You're right. For 460, we're getting a great deal and saving an enormous amount of time, helping out Larry's crew and his park staff in addressing the needs of the community.
Let me push on that some more.
Sure.
So the 396 did not include those 6 bullets, correct?
Correct.
So then I'm correct, I believe. I'm not going to be as adamant as Jim was about it.
6 bullets
but I
plus.
believe those 6 bullets are costing us $64,000.
Yes,
So it is that simple.
you're right. It is that simple.
Okay.
Well, actually, I heard something a little different. You're saying if, let's say, all those other ones you said, Tokel Roundabout, stuff that was added throughout the year, added another 30,000 to that, then the delta here is $30,000 more for all this stuff. It's actually a better deal than what you were describing.
And it is a better deal. I just don't know that number, what the 396 would have jumped to. Did you do the math already?
Jumped to with the other added items during
Oh, is that,
2017.
okay.
yeah.
You did the math already, so, okay.
No, I pulled a number out of the air. I'm just, for illustrative purposes, I just said, let's assume they added up to 20 or 30. Maybe Keith would know the number, but for those extra items, but. Is anyone making any sense, Keith? If you could speak to the microphone.
Name and address.
Keith Camerano, 7221 Silent Creek Avenue Southeast.
I don't know if you should be required to do that. You should give your work address, otherwise somebody will be knocking on your door.
Well, that's true. The increase in, there's a lot of moving parts in the contract. The RFP is very complex. Most municipalities are. There is actually scope changes. There's deletions in the current contract from 2017 that brought the price down. The current raise is actually more than $60,000, but with efficiencies gained, scope changes, what we put together in a competitive bid, I'm proud of this. It's a good bid. It's good for the city, the citizens. We office here. We have a facility on site, so you're not paying for travel time. As I said, there's just a lot of moving parts. It's more than $60,000. It's a good deal. The all-in is the one I like, but that's up to you.
And we're making money back by leasing them the work yard that they stage out of too. So. Councilmember Shepherd.
So what cities do you normally work with?
They're in competitive bids. It's the prices are public record, so there are a lot of contractors that'll come in and find that number and just bid at 15% lower just to get the business. We've been involved in City of Bellevue, City of Shoreline, City of Sammamish, City of Issaquah, City of Burien, down south, quite a few other cities as well.
And so do they all have just one bid that comes in, or is it just us?
You know, I can't comment on what they get. So I came in. I
That you were picked.
I took
Okay.
this very seriously.
Okay.
And, I've been working with Dan and his team for the last 5.5 years on different scenarios going through. Being the incumbent, still it took quite a bit of time and quite a bit of work just to kind of slice and dice and put the numbers together for all the facilities of what Dan's looking for.
Keith, how many main yards do you have? I know Woodinville is your big headquarter operation, but
there's,
I mean, I think one of our advantages is you can
yeah.
stage right here out of the city, so your transportation costs are cut down. And it's a win for us too, because we actually derive revenue from leasing you that property.
Yeah, in Western Washington, we have 9 facilities.
I meant more in the King County, or just this.
In King County?
King County region.
I think there's 5.
Okay.
Woodinville and Kent are our main facilities. Our corporate office is in Woodinville.
Yeah. So we're one of your main yards in the east side that services, you service Issaquah out of our yard here, I saw.
No.
Oh, you don't?
No, we service from this yard, the only, outside of City of Snoqualmie and City of North Bend, the only site is Talus in Issaquah, and that's because there's a relationship with the project manager here.
Okay.
It saves, out of 23 employees, it saves you 46 hours a day in travel time. Used to be facilitated out of our Woodinville office. That's a lot of dollars.
Councilmember Stonewall.
So Dan, he had mentioned that there were some scope changes, so insinuating that there were maybe some things that were deleted from 2017 contract that maybe they're no longer doing. If that's the case, do you have a way to articulate what those things are that have been removed?
Well, the changes he's referring to is like neighborhood parks, where they used to just do the turf management only. Now they do the beds, edging, garbage, things of that nature we've added.
But my understanding was I thought I heard the word removed. I thought there were things that were removed from 2017 that they'll no longer be doing.
There's some aeration. We're going to do the aeration and fertilizing on the athletic fields, things of that nature. We handle that ourselves. We have the staff and...
That NOS was doing that prior to that, or?
Yeah, and did you want to talk to that, or no? Were we? Do you want me to tell them? It's up to you.
Just clarify what you meant by a couple of the deletion issues. Yeah.
For all formal turf panels, that's anything that's irrigated that has a fertilization or an IPM program. You're looking at the Parkway Seminole laterals. In contract from the past was aerate, thatch, and top dress. Those have been removed and gone in-house now. The swale is one that is irrigated, but it's not formal, so that's only a mow. The bottom of the swale has been removed from weekly visits to 6 times a year, and the sides being mowed weekly now. That's if you've got.
So we'll see longer grass in the bioswales first.
You already see longer grass
in the bottom.
Yeah.
Can you estimate what those items being removed saved us? What that amounted to? Because that's helping me get to a better delta.
Yeah, it's, how I view that is we contract out completely 100% Jeannie Hansen Park. Does that mean we don't need to go there? No, it means we still need to go. We need to check on the bathrooms, garbage, see how NLS is doing, manage them. So it's the same thing. We have to go to the areas that Keith just described. We still want to get our eyes on it. We still want to take care of some of it. Don't want to let go of everything, if you will. I don't have a dollar amount to that to give you tonight. I mean, I could get that for you, or I can work with Keith and get that. But that's the reason or rationale. We still need to keep our eyes, heavily within the parks. Can't just turn over to Keith, walk away, and not do anything.
All right. Any other questions or discussion, Council? Councilmember Mayhew.
So is the committee, Parks and Public Works Committee recommending, are there some alternatives here? Is one alternative being recommended?
So I believe Dan recommended the 460. He didn't dare try and do the 600. So that was what was presented. If I recall correctly, that was what was presented to us.
Yeah, correct.
We saw it and said, let's move it forward. So if you want to debate the $200,000 extras, I guess we can do that. But the recommendation from the committee was, let's go with this 460 option.
Right. No, I just want to be clear on which one is being recommended. The question I have is about not about the scope of work, it's about the budget. And I'm just trying to understand, I've got in the agenda staff, so first off, on the agenda bill, there's a section, can we get that back up? So there's a section called budget, which is blank for some reason. I don't know why that's blank. But budget is discussed in the agenda staff report, but I just got very, very confused about this, about what amount actually is appropriated for this.
Rob. Thank you.
Can we bring up the staff report and go to the budget section on that?
Top one.
Oh, there you go.
Rob Orton, Interim Finance Director. So the budget report talks about a mistake that we made in the biennium budget that we caught in 2017, but I missed it in 18. So we severely under budgeted the amount of this contract that was allocated to parks by about $150,000. If the contract were to be renewed just in kind right now, we'd have to restore that because that's what the current amount is, and that's what we're paying, about $15,245 a month. No excuse, just missed it. So in addition to that, if you we were to restore that, the corrected budget, I think, is $426,800, and that is about $34,000 short of meeting the $460,000 contract. So our recommendation is that we solve both by using the general fund balance.
Okay, I don't like that recommendation. Let me just be clear, so I make sure I understand you. Because so the amount that's actually appropriated, if we go look at the appropriated amount, what is that amount? Is it 426?
No, it's 260,000 something dollars.
62.
That 262 number in there?
Yes.
262, 896.
Should be 427,000.
Should be, well, the amount that's being proposed right now is, as I understand, 460,000, give or take. Is that right?
Right. Which would go into effect January 1st, 2019, or when?
No. Had there not been an error, Jim,
this
that
year.
the 427.
Immediately, okay.
No, that's not what I'm worried about.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get clear on how we fix the appropriation for this year, because the problem is if we approve this, let's sake of discussion, we assume the recommended 460,000, we also have to go fix the appropriation because we don't have an appropriation for this amount.
So our practice is that there are usually a lot of budget changes during the year. We save them up and make one large ordinance amending the budget for all of those things that you've approved during the year. And we do that, otherwise each correction would take 2 readings and its own ordinance.
Right. So what that answer suggests is that we don't do a very good job of budgeting because our budgets have a whole bunch of situations where we have to adjust them. So I would just make the comment that that's something that we ought to think about, and I'll just leave it at that. Because I would just point out that I've gone and looked at other cities. They don't make the number of budget adjustments that we make. We seem to be an outlier. So just.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Okay.
If we could live with the midterm budget as is, I would be a pleased fella.
So just to close this out, it's my thought, the reason I reacted when you said take it out of fund balance is the notion of paying for an ongoing service out of fund balance seems like a very dangerous concept to me. But my belief is that there's enough room in the general fund, that we could when we go and fix the appropriation, we'll still be fine, that we won't have to go out of fund balance. There's actually sufficient revenue available for this.
And
Is that?
we would pay it out of the general fund anyway, and are paying it out of the general
But
fund.
there's likely
so.
sufficient revenue to cover it. It wouldn't necessarily, it's unlikely it would have to come out of fund balance. Would you?
Well, no, I would say that we use the fund balance, the amount of money left over from year to year, to correct some of these things.
Okay, so this is a 3-year contract we're talking about, and so my discomfort with your answer is that that means that we will not be able to pay, we're going to be paying for this for 3 years out of fund balance. That sounds like, if we can't afford to pay this contract, that's a different problem for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to be dealing with a new budget in which hopefully we won't make the same mistake 2 more times.
We'll adjust it to the new amount.
So
But there's sufficient revenue, you would expect there to be sufficient revenue in the general fund to pay for this contract, is that?
yeah,
We're that's what I'm trying to
ending
get at.
up to being about $700,000 in the black in the fund balance by the end of this year.
Well, so my recommendation would be is when we appropriate this in that catch-up appropriation fix that you're speaking of, I would not like to see this come out of fund balance. I would like to see us find this in the budget, meaning other expenses or revenues. I would not like to see this cause us to have a general fund that is not paying for its expenses. And I don't think that's a problem, but I just want to make sure that we're heading in that path.
Councilmember Shepherd and then Councilmember Sunwell.
So I have a problem with, we had a number of contracts. We've got something coming up after this and this one, and contracts in the past where we've not had competitive bids, and I understand that the state code may not require it, but I think we as a city should be requiring more competitive bidding. This is, if we took the worst case scenario of $0.685 million multiplied times 3, we're over $2 million. And I just can't understand what any city would do, would allow not having a competitive bid if it's at all possible, and I believe it's possible. So been very frustrated with the lack of a competitive bid with a $2 million spend.
Councilmember Sunwell.
So I guess this is somewhat tangential to the conversation, but Mayhew brought it up, is maybe one of the ways to fix our outlierness on budget issues is to not pile these up to the end of the year. I think if we had budget fixes that came before us every council meeting, I think that might get to the point, I don't know if embarrassing is the word, but I think that might help shore things up a little bit so that we don't get this situation, because it's easy to punt it till December and everything just kind of goes into this big blob of, correction. But I bet if we made every correction at the time it was needed, something tells me that our hygiene would get a little better.
Well, I'd like to say that, not all of these changes are bad. In fact, most of them aren't. You just approved a grant tonight that will require a different appropriation in 2019. We never try to budget grants. We never know if they're going to come available, let alone get approved. And so to, accept the grant and to spend money from it requires an appropriation. But, if you do that, I think you're making a lot of extra work for yourself. And again, most, except for your bonehead interim finance director, most of the decisions that have changed the budget are approved by this body. So,
Mayor, if I could address this.
Yes, please.
I'm not familiar with other cities. I'd certainly like to hear more about that if anybody's got anything. But my understanding and my experience has been it's pretty routine for cities to have budget amendments throughout the year. But you cover those in one fell swoop. You have a list. You keep council informed of those. If you would go to each one of those, as Rob suggested, you'd be spending an inordinate amount of time, like we're doing right now, discussing a lot of these issues for no apparent reason. Budget amendments are pretty common in municipal government. I'm not sure about private sector, but I want to make sure that's clear. This goes back to my entire history of being in city government, city management. This is not uncommon because councils make decisions routinely. And this is one of those you have to make an amendment in order to secure a contract.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, I don't think that's factually true. If you go to our state auditor's report, the state auditor in the report lists out all of our budget modifications. It goes on for pages. Okay, it goes on and on and on. You go to other cities and they don't have that.
I'll be happy to address that. Just give me some time in F&A.
It's just a function of how we budget. And if we look forward and we say, hey, we think, we're currently paying $380,000 for a thing. We know we're going to pay some more this coming year, and we put more money into the budget. Then when the thing comes in, you're not blowing out your budget. You've got room in your budget for that.
I think it's partly functional that we were a line item budget. We've been trying to get off that for years. This council maintains they want to have a line item budget. So each of those line items has to be balanced at the end of the year. So that's where the amendments come. That's why you have page after page after page. I believe other cities do it differently. We'll be happy to discuss that in the budget process, but that's something that this council has adhered to since the 13 years I've been here. That has not been a suggested change. I'll be happy to address that. But that's why it's happening that way. Then it's not improper. Those have to be made. Those are the adjustments that have to be required by the state auditor for that very reason. You have to balance your line items.
Councilmember Shepherd.
And on this agenda bill, has this gone through a 3-touch process?
Maybe 9 touches.
Yeah, yes, it has.
I guess I missed it, yeah.
F&A went through Parks Public Works Committee.
Just so we're clear
Twice.
again, the council discussion earlier this evening, the 3-touch is supposed to be, it's intended for each council member to have a view of that. That's, I think, what the intent was when we first discussed it. So if it's been in front of one committee 3 times, that is not the same as having this council body, or at least in other committees, having each councilor have a third look at that, a minimum. I think that's what the intent is about that issue.
Councilmember Mayhew.
The point of budgeting is to set an expectation of what we're going to spend in a year. If our budget has dozens and dozens of modifications to it, it's not a good budget. That's the point I would make. I think we need to look at the hygiene around that. I think if the council has asked for the budget to be done in a way that's causing that to happen, I think we should look at that. But I think a budget that has to be amended and amended and amended isn't a good budget. That's my point.
I'd also add to the discussion that I don't know how other cities do this, but we've got 3 union contracts. We've got a pension system, a health plan that increase their rates all the time in off-budget years. The pension rates go up in July. We have to pay them.
Rob, I don't think we need to go into the minutia, but we can get that during the budget discussion. This is a good discussion item for the budget process.
Yeah, I think we need to noodle into it more. I mean, what occurs to me too is that what's made us very unusual, and Bob and Brian have been along for that ride for over a decade, is that we were the fastest growing city in the state of Washington for over a decade, and so it's been a lot of moving variables at a very fast speed and sometimes unpredictable, and so it's been we've built up generous revolving funds and reserves and others to kind of build that cushion so we could be flexible and nimble and move quickly and evolve with that change. And so, but to your point, Jim, it may be time now that we see that end in sight with the build out of Snoqualmie Ridge, that we're kind of shifting into that, transitioning to that more of a maintenance mode and more that a new normal. That it's a good conversation to be had. All right. Any other discussion or questions on this item, Council? Councilmember Shepherd?
Well, I just want to make a point that this is the first time I've seen this agenda bill.
You've been at these committees, though, either as just a
I don't know
observer.
I don't always get to all of them, and I haven't been allowed to get to any of them.
But you've been at committee meetings where this wasn't discussed.
I don't think so, no.
We've discussed it the last 2 committee meetings at least in Parks.
I think I wasn't able to make the last meeting because I went to another meeting at the same time.
I believe you were actually in attendance for one of those.
Yeah. I think there's a conflict with this and the Public Safety Committee meeting, the Public Works meeting and Public Safety.
Yeah, are those the 2 that overlap? It could have been that you got here a little late.
Just back to back.
Yeah,
they don't
right.
end on time.
So is there I heard a statement. Is there a request in that of your fellow councilors?
I'd like to push this off to another council meeting.
Councilmember Summerall.
So I guess this goes back to a prior item we were discussing. If someone is not up to speed now, how are they going to get up to speed? If it's only being handled at 2 committee meetings, and for whatever reason I'm not able to go to one of those meetings, or at some point, I mean, it's been in the agenda packet for 4 days. At some point, we'll just keep pushing stuff off and off and off. There's a reason we made every single meeting available to every single city council member to attend, and I'm the first to admit that I don't go to the other ones, but that's on me. So, or at least I don't usually go to them. But so I would not be supportive of pushing this off.
All right, seeing no further discussion from the council. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Peter Adam, P.O. Box 1873, Snoqualmie. I'm kind of surprised. The issue that I'm hearing is not that the issue is not with 460,000. The issue is that there was a mistake made with previous budgets, and line items are line items. It shouldn't have said 260. It should have said 460. But that should in no way reflect upon making a decision tonight, I wouldn't think. They're you're mixing apples with oranges. But you're the city attorney, right? Is that right? Oh, I'm sorry. You're the city minister. Okay. So I was kind of wondering why the attorney was telling us how to run the business. I just feel that the mistake going back to the line item and what has to happen the cleanup at the end of the year, that's simply cleaning up mistakes that were made. And that's a whole separate issue that I'm kind of stunned you're not addressing. But with regards to the 460, I think that's got nothing to do. That's a standalone and should be passed tonight.
All right, thank you, Peter. Anna?
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard, Southeast. I've been at each of those committee meetings, and unless the agenda packet changed since Friday, I guess I'm confused. When were your questions going to be addressed for the chairman? Because you had requested one to see the comparison of what it meant for the 685, because you had wanted to see if it made sense to turn it all over. And they were going to provide you or us with what those employees are paid out, the seasonal, because what if it was less expensive to do the A packet? And that was something that I was waiting to see, and it wasn't presented. The other was 2 committees ago, you had asked Sean to see the original signed contract. It still hasn't come forward in the agenda. And I guess my third question I asked you, and I was really hoping you would bring it up, was why, when I just searched the website, does it say that we passed a contract for $680-some thousand in 2013? That still just hasn't been answered. So, and then if that's what we passed, because there it is, and I sent it to you, an ordinance in 2013 that the council approved it for 600 and some, it was very close to that number. But if you did that, then why didn't you budget for that? And how did the contract become 400 and something thousand? So I guess I'm confused, and I don't think it ever went to the AF&A committee, but just questions that I had hoped to hear to answer today that you had asked.
Anna, did you provide a home address?
7713 Center Boulevard, Southeast.
Oh, your business address, okay.
Would you like my home as well?
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never had to provide it before.
You asked me if I'd like it, and I said yes.
Is it required?
No, Julie. You're a North Bend resident, though, correct?
No, I'm not. Actually, I live on
Julie, go ahead.
Southeast.
Julie Lake, box 1748, Snoqualmie. Mr. Marcinko said he was unable to find total landscape, and so I quickly Googled it and found it within a split second. So maybe I'd really like to see better competitive bidding, more, like really make an effort to make competitive bidding, maybe save some money. Thanks.
Julie, did you provide an address?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else want to speak at this time? Any member of the public? All right. Seeing no one else come forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right. With that, we will move on back up on the agenda to Agenda Bill 18055. Let me know if there's anything I missed. Resolution 1443, awarding a small works, public works contract to the unauthorized execution of a small works contract with Well West Construction for the police station security improvement project.
That's 055?
Yep.
All right, the police station security
Yes, sir.
improvements project will increase security for inmate transports and drop-offs and police vehicles. Move to approve resolution 1443, awarding a small public works contract to and authorize the execution of a small works contract with Well West Construction for the police station security improvement project and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18055 as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Any discussion, Council? Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so I did get the list of contractors that were contacted for this bid, and there was almost 1,500. And of those, there was about 500 that were dupes. And out of that, there was about 9 companies that actually worked on fences. And of the companies that I contacted, I found a number of contractors that would love to bid on this. But I was told by the city attorney that I should not contact contractors about this bid.
I'll ask the city attorney to clarify.
Well, Mayor, if council wants to talk about legal advice, we should do that in an executive session. I'd be happy to clarify things, but I don't think, I said a number of things, and I don't think talking about them in open session is
All right.
appropriate.
Just for the note for the public, I don't think the statement the councilor said is exactly correct, but that could be addressed, I guess, in an executive session in terms of what the city attorney advised. Dan, did you want to add something to this, or are you just there to answer any questions?
I can answer any questions you guys have, or I can try to.
Councilmember Sunwell and then Councilmember Holloway.
There seems to be a lot of controversy here on this, and since it's your job, not a council member's job, to solicit bids, can you maybe articulate what the process is for a bid solicitation, maybe even specifically in this example?
Sure. We send it out to the full, as Councilmember Shepherd stated. We don't pick and choose at the MSRC site. We just send it to everybody, so we're consistent each and every single time when we go to bid. And they pick and choose. Why they choose not to submit a bid, I don't know. I couldn't answer that. But the opportunity is there for them to bid. And in this case, we didn't get any bids. Well, the initial bid that went out, pricing came in too high, and we didn't have enough budgeted. We went back, recircled the wagons, and came back with a larger budget amount. Came back, worked with the police department and had a slightly different fencing project, went back out to bid, didn't get anybody that came to bid. So at that point, we worked with the city attorney and went through the process of sitting down and negotiating with a contractor.
Is that a contractor that's been a known contractor for us in the past?
Yes.
Can you explain why they wouldn't have bid?
I can't.
And now they're interested?
No, I don't know. I can't say why they did not bid the initial. I don't know if the city attorney had any conversations with the engineer, no. So all I know is they did not bid. We called them up and we said, hey, we didn't get any bids. We'd like to entertain if you would sit down with us. Took about 6 weeks before they became available, so it's time becomes an issue. You know, people are, it's just nature. I mean, they're busy. It's trying to sit them down, go through everything. Took quite a bit of time to get to that point.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So I was able to contact 9 different companies, and of that 4 are very interested in bidding on this project.
Councilmember Sunwell.
In your role of bid acquisition, did you ask them why they didn't bid?
Some of them didn't get the bid package.
Is that possible, Dan?
We just post it on the MSRC site. That's all we do, and so everybody on that site gets a notice via email. So if they choose not to,
I'll defer to the city
they're
attorney.
notified, so.
City attorney.
Just a point of clarification, and maybe this is just lawyerly precision, but there's a difference in process between the formal bid process and the small works process. State statute provides for a less formal process for public work projects that are estimated to cost less than $300,000, which this project was. So it allows individual cities to establish their own small works roster each year by inviting contractors to apply and be on the roster, or it allows you to use, in this case, the Municipal Research Services Corporation maintains a state and region-wide small works roster, which is what Snoqualmie uses. And so that process, you can telephone folks and solicit, it's called quotations for small works, not technically a bid. You can solicit those through an informal means, or you can email, which in this case, Dan indicated they're electronically communicating to the roster. If it's a formal bid, we have a detailed set of plans and specs. I think council has seen the bid packages for some of those projects. They're 2, 3, 4 inches thick. There's an invitation to bid, a detailed set of rules, how you bid. And the invitation is published in the newspaper a number of different times. The plan sets the city has to pay for to make available on Builders Exchange of Washington, which is I'm not sure of the technical term, but it's an electronic sharing system for where you have big plan sets and so on. So this was a small works process, and so Dan is describing that process for making the invitation for quotes rather than bids available. I think in common parlance, the engineers tend to refer to them all as bids, but the law distinguishes and the process is different too. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So now it started out as an estimated number that's going to be, that would have been a small works project, but now that it's come back, it's actually over that threshold.
Correct, but in either case, the statute allows, if there is no responsive bid or small work, then it authorizes the city to either make another call for bids or directly negotiate a contract, and that's what happened here. So it was a direct negotiation, and that's allowed by the express language of the statute. I think the question came up at committee, and I emailed the committee because there was some confusion about whether you had to go out once or twice. The statute says only once. You can go out a second time if you'd like, but you're not required to. And so in this case, it was a direct negotiation, and then the contract is the same in either case. So it's just, the difference is the formality of the solicitation process. You're correct, the number that we're at now, if that had been our engineer's estimate, we would have used a formal bid process rather than a small works. But when you get there later on in the process, that doesn't, especially when there are no bids, disqualify you from using the direct negotiation process.
Councilmember Jeans, did you have your hand up?
Yes. I can understand why at the outset this was considered a small works contract, because the city estimated that it would be somewhere around $40,000 for a fence around the private vehicles of the police in the parking lot.
The Sally Port.
The Sally Port.
Pardon?
The Sally Port.
The Sally
Drop
Port.
off the criminals.
I thought the original plan was for the parking lot.
Go ahead, Chief.
And at some point in time, there was an additional budget for this. And I'm not sure any of us participated in the fact that there's an additional need and a need for additional funds that gets us into $600,000+ for not only a fenced, but fenced and gated and a lot of high security items. That's my comment.
Dan, please clarify.
For clarification, the contract is $304,376.47 total. Sally Port and the parking lot.
And could you speak at the Public Safety Committee meeting? There was some confusion about what was budgeted. I think a $45,000 number was tossed around, which didn't sit right with me because I clearly remember conversations that budgeted in the neighborhood of $300,000 that was appropriated. So I don't know if Rob or you guys want to speak to that as well to answer Councilmember Jean's question.
I can speak to a little bit of the history of where this $45,000 mark came, which was probably in about 2013, and why it's increased to the 304 mark. Originally, we were wanting to secure the back Sallyport area that's been mentioned, and I don't know if there's any graphs that you guys have seen or that are here tonight, but it shows the back part of the police department where we have
Brendan, can you just open up Google Map and zoom in on the police station while he's talking, please? Go ahead.
Where we have the inmate transfers, we have our area where we have vehicle seizures, and we have storage of evidence and bulk storage in the back. So we wanted to secure the very back, which is back by the ponds where we have the fish. Do you have the pointer?
The laser. Or just go up and point to it, Kevin.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
He's got it. Literally.
Just show him where the Sallyport is.
All right. Yeah. So the back area back there, that is the area, like you can see the bulk storage. It's that elongated cargo area. So we basically wanted to secure the back end of the police department across here and then here. That was the original $45,000 bid.
And that's for when, like, you take a prisoner out of a car to put him into a holding cell. You don't want him running off or...
Exactly. And so right in here, there's a garage door that opens up. Our jail facilities on the first floor down here, a garage door opens up and a vehicle pulls inside of here, and you do a transfer of your inmate into the booking facility, or sometimes we have Department of Corrections or other agencies that come and do prisoner transfers right in this back secure area. And obviously, there's chance that because there's no barriers, there could be a chase. Somebody could run off and so forth. We also have, and I mean, this is a good example here where, or at least that one there, where we have seized vehicles that are waiting for search warrants, and or vehicles that we've seized waiting for negotiations of whether or not they're going to be returned to defendants because of court and so forth. So on top of the fact that we have other resources that are sitting back here, one of which right on this end of this is actual evidence that is locked up that does not have an alarm system. It's not the high asset, jewelry, drugs, money, and so forth like that, because that's in the main bulk area of the police department, but yet it still is evidence. So there's nothing securing it. Original $45,000 bid was that had a gate, an automatic gate, and it was serpentine wire and all that stuff to keep it fortified. So
just for quick clarification, the $45,000 was not the bid. The $45,000 was your budget. The bid came in at a higher number.
Right,
So I just want to make sure everybody's clear that you're talking about the original budget was $45,000 for that fence.
True, very true,
For
thank you.
just the Sallyport. There was an
Just the
original
Sallyport.
larger budget to include the additional fence.
For
Right.
just the original budget for that Sallyport fence.
So then it expanded. We had a couple series of events where we were having people, I'll back up real quick. So this area right in here, this is generally where all the police cars are parked. And then these parking areas around in here, this is privately owned officers, support staff vehicles. So what we've been having over the last couple of years, some issues with people that have been coming into the police department parking lot, and they've been videoing, taking photographs, writing down officers' license plate numbers, and these people, a couple of them are very well known to us. So it's very overt. They're contacting the police department. They say this is a public place. We have the right to be here. And obviously, it makes us feel very uncomfortable. We have support staff that, in the evening hours, in winter, it's dark when they leave, and there's no security for them. And we have, we're very conscientious about that. So that's why when we were talking a couple years ago of expanding this to basically take in the whole perimeter of this lot right here as a separate, because there'll be another gate there that blocks off the Sallyport area for the prisoner transports and all the evidence of this being a separate gate right here, and to secure the main parking lot and officers' cars as well as support staff's safety in and out of the building.
Council, can I have a motion and a second to extend the meeting past 10 o'clock tonight?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Captain, please continue.
Okay. All right. A lot of the reason why we also wanted to extend out into the larger area is because there's been cases in which officers have been shot. There's been cases where support staff have been assaulted as they come out. It has not happened here, fortunately. But I think that if we look from a regional standpoint, there's been things in California, Idaho, and all over the place where you could show, and has happened, where officers have been walking out of the police department and somebody's weighing in weight and they've shot them and killed them. So we want to, not that that would stop a bullet or somebody from afar, but it certainly gives us security from allowing people to enter our lot and to potentially somehow have one of our staff members be assaulted and or fatally killed.
Councilmember Ross.
So we talked about this public safety, and so definitely you guys have been waiting for a fence since 2015, and we're certainly, worried about the security of the employees and the evidence and criminals running around, possibly escaping. Right. But he also stated that Safeway, that people shopping at Safeway actually uses the overflow parking as well.
Thank you for bringing that up. It is very true. We are turning into an overflow lot for Safeway, even though right in here, there's 2 signs that say, restricted access, but people don't really look at that stuff. But it's, people are using it as an overflow lot for Safeway.
Councilmember Sunwall and Holloway.
So there's some irony in me doing this, but so I was just looking at the Issaquah Police Station. Go ahead and laugh. And I don't, they do have a police department. Yes, it's their own, actually. And I don't see any fencing. Again, I'm the last guy in this panel that's going to say we should do something or not do something because Issaquah does it or doesn't do it. But I look at their structure. I know they have underground parking, but I also see a lot of what appear to be civilian parking things outside. So in fairness to them, they're on Sunset's a fairly major street in Issaquah. I get that. I'm just wondering if and I don't even know if this is cheaper. I'm just wondering if there's an option of better lighting, better security cameras and things like that versus just a fence. Because I gotta say, a fence looks really like, I don't know, it looks like a FBI compound. I just envision this compound. I totally get the Sally, whatever Jesse Raphael thing that you have in the back, whatever that's called. I get that, but that's in the back and no one can see it. I don't know, kind of has a penitentiary feel to it.
So in the plans, we worked through this quite a bit, is along the frontage, is all decorative iron, iron gates, as well as the automatic gate here. All of this and up to like here is all aesthetic looking iron gate. So it doesn't, when you drive by, it doesn't look like the 6-foot security slatted serpentine wire look at whatsoever. It's very aesthetic, and we had to do that with the commercial
standards. What's the height of that fence, by the way, in the front?
6.
6 feet.
6 feet. In the back is 8 with the serpentine wire, and
Okay.
all the way back across here, and across here is all 6 foot. These along here and the backside are all 6 foot black security slatted so that you can't, jump over that easily and or see in.
Okay.
Who designed the, I'm sorry,
Councilmember Shepherd.
who designed the fence?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought somebody was putting over there. Well, we got a bid, and well, first of all, we came up with a team to kind of figure out what we wanted, working with Brian Coleman, basically Dan's staff, and coming up with an idea of what we conceptually wanted out of it. And then we, the front part was a team effort. The mayor, Bob Larson, was all
Community
part of that.
development staff
Community
also.
development staff.
They're the one that set the standard for the
Yes,
fence in the front.
absolutely. Mark Hoffman was all part of that.
Councilman Holloway, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay, so I think we've, in part to answer the other question, who designed the fence, in part we did. Okay, because there was discussions on that fence at the committees and whatnot, and I think part of that aesthetic fence was council input at one stage. But I'm not sure the argument for us tonight is what color the fence is. The argument for us tonight is there was a competitive bid process. We didn't get a bid, so we went and talked to one contractor and said, would you do it and what's your price? Do we want to accept that, or do you want to go back and try and force a competitive bid on the project?
Fair enough.
Okay, so, you know, you keep me past 10 o'clock, I get a little irritable.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so in talking to the various fence people, they were telling me that the gate that we have is really large, and we have something that has like a cyclone fence with the slats in it, and it could become a problem with a wind shear problem because of how large the gate is. And
Yeah, that's not true, ma'am. Right, this gate here is all iron open, just bars, picture bars. So wind goes right through, there is no resistance like something that's flat with the security slats in it. So that one there has no wind impact whatsoever, and it opens this way, inward.
Okay.
And this one back here is the same scenario, although it will have the slats, but that hasn't been brought up as a potential issue.
There was an engineering design on this. I would prefer that we not try to junior engineer this through hearsay.
All right, sustained. It's not germane to the motion on the table.
Let's vote.
Councilmember Jeans.
In a poor way, I posed a question. Let me try to pose it a different way. Is there someone from F&A who will talk about budget, or someone from public safety who will talk about budget? I don't remember a budget that got to this level. Someone tell me that this is a budgeted item, and this is within the budget.
There is $360,000 that's budgeted, that's in our budget
That was
currently for this.
appropriated.
That's appropriated.
Yeah.
Councilmember Mayhew.
I asked this question by email a few days ago and got a response and tracked it into the budget, and I find it in the budget. It is, I did find it in our budget.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's right. I was concerned at the committee meeting, Bob, where an older historical number had been mentioned and said that it was only $45,000 appropriated, and that didn't ring true when we did verify that. And Jim was one that followed up too. You know, because my recollection was, yes, we did appropriate that. I clearly recall the council putting that into the biennium budget and agreeing to it.
Got it.
Just to clarify, it had been put in the biennium budget, part in 17 and part in 18, and then we pulled the 17 forward to 18, and it's all covered there.
Yeah.
Good.
Councilmember Holloway.
Move to call the question.
All right. All those in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Question has been called. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing no one come forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. 6-4, 1 against. Motion passes. With that, we're moving on to Agenda Bill 18057, Resolution 1445, declaring surplus property and authorizing the sale.
We're doing 5-6 first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. that and one other item, we still have to do the minutes, and I think we've cleaned up the consent agenda. Agenda Bill 18056, purchase one 2018 Ford all-wheel drive SUV marked police rated vehicle not to exceed $68,500 for the Snoqualmie North Bend Police Department.
On January 10th, 2005, the City Council approved an ordinance establishing the Fleet Management Department, adding a new Chapter 2.30 to the Snoqualmie Municipal Code, creating a new fund to be entitled Equipment Rental and Revolving. Fleet Division is requesting to replace one 2011 Chevrolet two-wheel drive Tahoe police vehicle, which has reached its useful life, with one 2018 four-wheel drive all-wheel drive police-rated vehicle. The purchase price of the vehicle is $64,500 with a 2018 budget. The purchase is under the City Council approved 2017 budget, but due to low miles and condition unit was extended as long as possible, with funding being requested continuing to the next budget year. Move to approve purchase one 2018 Ford all-wheel drive SUV marked police rated vehicle not to exceed $68,500 for the Snoqualmie North Bend Police Department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Any discussion? I guess one point I would have is I didn't catch this language earlier. We are not the Snoqualmie North Bend Police Department. We're the Snoqualmie Police Department servicing North Bend. I assume that which city is this vehicle serving? Snoqualmie. All right, that's what I thought.
So the motion doesn't even require to have that at the end of the sentence, frankly. It just should ask it's not to exceed $68,500. I mean, it's clearly a Snoqualmie expenditure. That's the motion. We need to put that stuff on there.
All right, Councilmember Mayhew.
I just have a question. I was a little confused in some of the exhibits. I am of the impression that we're specifically looking to purchase the Ford Interceptor SUV. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's my recommendation, is you're going to replace the like vehicle with a like vehicle. And it's a patrol vehicle, so you're not going to, the options that were put in this report are detective vehicles, the truck, and then the SUV. Obviously, the truck isn't appropriate. It's not a like vehicle, and we don't really need that vehicle at this point. And detective vehicle, we don't really need because we already have two, and we only have two detectives that are going to be assigned to those vehicles. So it really limits what we want and what we need. And what we're asking for is to the Ford SUV Interceptor vehicle for four-wheel drive vehicle to replace the current four-wheel drive vehicle that we have.
So I'd like to make a motion to modify the motion to state where it says marked police rated vehicle to insert
the Ford Interceptor SUV.
A second.
Okay, motion and a second to modify as stated by Councilmember Mayhew. Any discussion on that item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, back to the original motion with the modification. Any further discussion, Council? Councilmember Ross.
So we talked about this in public safety, and Don Harris presented it. I think one of the things he stated is that there's a possibility of taking some equipment off of the current vehicle and adding it to this. So there would be some type of a cost savings in there.
Correct. Well, we'll use a majority of the equipment that's currently in the vehicle to outfit the new vehicle as a cost savings. So the cost will not go over that stated amount.
With the caveat or warning that that's usually works when we're going from like a Tahoe to a Tahoe, but this is a bit of a smaller vehicle, and so even the gun racks and stuff might not quite convert.
We've been lucky. We have one on the streets right now, and so we've done the transition with one vehicle already, and we've only found that I'm aware of one issue that we probably have to take a look at, and that's the back box doesn't fit as well, that we put our equipment and stuff into the bed of the or into the back of the Ford as it did in the Chevy. So that's a small thing. Doesn't really raise the cost any, but everything else seemed to work.
Councilmember Lasay, did you have your hand up, and then Sunwell?
I did. I just want to, that specific thing wasn't discussed in Parks and Public Works, but we did discuss setting that a value also to include Washington State sales tax and the other taxes that go along with that, and outfitting the vehicle so that we had some buffer there to allow for some replacement of equipment if necessary, reuse of equipment, and then also cover the sales tax.
Councilmember Sunwell.
So for my days on the Public Safety Committee, I want to say 6-8 months ago, it seems like we approved the purchase of a Tahoe, and I want to say the price of it was in the $80,000 range. And my understanding with moving to the Explorer was that we were going to save a fair amount of money by moving the Explorer. So as I look at $68,000, and that price includes saving some amount of money on reusing equipment, it doesn't seem like as much of a savings as I would have expected.
Yes, the Chevy Tahoes are between $10,000 to $20,000 overall with equipment and everything, over what the cost of a Ford is. They do the same, they have the same purpose. Four-wheel drive is kind of a requirement up here. And so really, when I started here, and I think even before I started here, the discussion was that we're going to go away from the Tahoes. They're a great vehicle. They just cost $15,000 to $20,000 more than the option. And it's obviously a good option because if you go around to many areas, including Washington State Patrol, they have the same Ford Interceptor vehicles on the road.
But I guess to follow up on that question, I guess I'm not seeing $15,000 to $20,000 in savings in this.
Looks like there's a
Councilmember Ross.
excuse me, there's a comparison sheet in there, and it shows the Ford SUV is $63,000, no WSST, so I guess it's sales tax.
I don't have that in front of me, but I know that when the numbers that were given to me when we were purchasing the Tahoe was around $80,000.
But so this shows the Tahoe here is like $71,000, but then you have to add all the equipment to it.
Here comes the point.
So on the agenda bill, there's an attachment. It's 2018 police vehicle comparison or something along those titles. Short of this is we disposition the detective vehicle as inappropriate for the intended use. There are 4 police vehicles that we're looking at. Of the 4, this is the cheapest one. So if you're going for a police patrol vehicle that we've said this is appropriate for us, this is the cheapest one. Can we move on?
Yes, thank you.
Councilman
Councilmember
Sundwall, I
Mayhew.
will get you those numbers. So.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, there you go. That's the
Councilmember
chart
Mayhew.
she's talking about.
Just 2 points. I'm in favor of this. Not to be confusing. In fact, I won't tell you what brought this to my attention, but I did note that the Washington State Patrol is driving this vehicle. I'll just it was somebody else that was pulled over, not me. Okay, so I just this is being funded out of the internal service, the equipment fund. Is that right?
Yes.
ER&R,
And
yeah.
I just want to make the point, it would be very helpful, certainly to me, and I suspect to my fellow council members, there's a fairly large amount built up in that fund, and I know that there is a long-term plan for vehicle replacement. It would be really nice when these kind of things come forward to know how that matches up to that plan. So if one of the attachments were, here's that plan, and this is consistent with that plan, or it's out of the plan, and just so we kind of understood how that was fitting in with what we're doing with that fund balance, what we're trying to do with how we're funding that whole fund. But so that's just a request for the future, but I'm in favor of this.
So even if the agenda bill, there's just a paragraph or two just saying.
Well, if there was a spreadsheet, I've heard that Mr. Marcinko is good with spreadsheets.
Kind of like a CIP plan with scheduled replacement.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm sure Don's got that.
Well, however far out that plan goes, I know there's a fair amount accumulated in there. I assume there's a plan that's
Yeah, fire
being-
trucks
that
are like on a
backs that.
15-year schedule and.
Right, so
One
whatever's
cycle.
caused, that internal service fund charges the general fund every year. That's how it gets funded. So the amounts that it's hitting our general fund for, I assume, is all part of a plan. It was just nice to see how that plan, this is the end of that plan when we buy these vehicles. It would be nice to see how that matches up with that plan, which is therefore driving what's getting charged into our general fund.
Councilmember Holloway.
So I think it's a little broader scope than the agenda bill that's put in force, but when the last budget was approved, we actually reduced those rates because we were overfunding that plan.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get them back together.
Right, and so it'd just be nice to know when specific vehicles are coming against that, just to see how that matches up to that plan.
You have to realize too, this is a rolling stock, so literally this plan rolls forward. So each time you buy a new vehicle, you're already funding the replacement of it. In the case of police vehicle, perhaps 4 or 5 years out. Other vehicles like trucks maybe go 10 years, fire trucks will maybe go 20 years. So it's a never-ending process. It just keeps, it literally revolves.
Right, it'd just be great to get a picture on that.
But as compared to other communities, we are in a very enviable place for few communities who are paying forward on their vehicles rather than backwards on a.
It's a very responsible place to be. I just want to be able to see on these how it
Yeah.
matches in.
I think Don's got the information. You can, yeah. Very good. Any other comments or discussion, council? Chief, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item part of action? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we're moving back up to Agenda Bill 18057, Resolution 1445, declaring surplus property and authorizing the sale of surplus city property, the Tahoe two-wheel drive police vehicle.
The City Council passed Resolution 231 establishing a procedure for the sale of surplus city property. The resolution calls for the City Council to pass a resolution in order to sell city property. The City of Snoqualmie finds itself in possession of surplus property, Tahoe two-wheel drive police vehicle, that is appropriate to sell. Move to adopt Resolution 1445 declaring surplus property and authorizing the sale of surplus city property, Tahoe two-wheel drive police vehicle, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion is second to approve Agenda Bill 18057 as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Councilmember Mayhew.
I just have a question. Is the vehicle that would be surplused here the vehicle that is being replaced by the one we just authorized?
Yes.
Yes, that's why
Am I
Councilmember.
right in understanding that it's going to take 9 months for us to receive the vehicle?
Correct.
To order it, yeah.
So then why are we surplusing, don't they need to use it for 9 months?
And they will. Go ahead, Dan.
As soon as the new vehicle comes in, it gets equipped, outfitted, we'll switch.
So why are we surplusing it now instead of in
You're only
9 months?
authorizing the surplusing. We'll retain the vehicle until such time that we will obviously have the replacement ready to go. We do this so we can make sure that we're coinciding. We want to make sure you have to come back later and try to explain why you're surplusing a vehicle now when you purchased one 8 months ago. So we'll do it together. Hopefully then that authorization will stick with it. We don't sell the vehicle off until we absolutely have no use for it, which means, I think, in this case, the vehicle will be replaced. We just want the authority now to start the process.
I like touching things once.
So
Councilmember Song.
I think what Bob Larson is saying is while we have in the stream of conscience the vehicle we're purchasing, let's also focus on the vehicle we're replacing so that in November we're not rehashing all this.
Right, and saying, why are we surplusing this, and what was that, and revisit. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, council? Any member of the public like to comment on this item part of action? Anybody want a Tahoe? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I think we've gotten through the Parks and Public Works Committee. Is there any other items to report for that committee?
I was busy.
Let me know if I missed anything. And just to make sure I don't forget it later on or in the committee of the whole, I'm going to hit it now. I'm going to go back to the one of the consent items that was pushed forward, the minutes for April 9th, 2018 regular city council meeting. If I could have a motion on that, motion to approve.
What?
If I don't have a motion.
Motion to approve the April 9th, 2018 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second to approve the April 9th meeting minutes as stated by Councilmember Holloway. Any discussion? Councilmember Mayhew.
I'd like to make a motion that all references to Peggy be revised to Councilmember Shepherd.
All right, if there's no objection, oh, did I get a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second as stated by Councilmember Mayhew. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, is that all? Then back to the original motion. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item? See no, move forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, back down to Community Development Committee report.
No report.
Finance Administration Committee, Agenda Bill 18060, Resolution 1446, amending the rules of procedure for the City Council of the City of Snoqualmie, Washington.
All right. So council wishes to provide opportunity for all council members to attend all committee meetings as a member of the public and to provide at each committee of the whole a public comment period. Move to adopt Resolution 1446, amending the rules of procedure of the City Council of the City of Snoqualmie, Washington.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept Agenda Bill 18060 as stated by Councilmember Holloway.
So I'm gonna,
I don't think there needs to be much discussion about this.
yeah, I'm gonna assume you guys read the attachment, in which Jody did some review of current cities. You pretty much have a solution. Every city has its own solution to this. Okay, so, and some just don't do this. So, again, three main elements in this change is all meetings are noticed as committee of the whole. There's a provision brought down that we should have public comment during the committee meetings, and that councils wishing, non-committee council members are allowed to make comment as part of the public portion of that. Just some general cleanup, also brought down a section that if there's disruptive attendance, the committees have mechanism to handle that. Having just sat in Matt's chair, I thought that was a good idea. So I put that down there also.
All right, Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so some of the language that they have for the bill, it says 6.4.2.5.1. Any person making disruptive, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, this is a recommended change to this section. Any person making disruptive, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous while addressing the committee shall be asked to leave by the mayor or presiding officer and barred from further audience before the committee for that meeting. I understand that, he said, okay, so the comment is, I agree that disruptive or slanderous remarks should be prohibited. However, I feel the words impertinent and boisterous are too imprecise and may too easily be misapplied by the mayor or presiding officer simply because they do not agree with the person speaking. When one person considers impertinent, another will consider an important exercise of raising opposing points of view. What one person considers boisterous, another will consider to be expressing passionate feelings about an important topic. So I guess they would like to have the words disruptive and slanderous removed.
Slanderous or the impertinent, and there were two words that you were talking about.
Okay, impertinent and boisterous, they want to remove impertinent and boisterous.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay.
Sorry.
Are you making a motion, Peggy?
Yes, I'm making a motion to remove those words.
Could you restate that in a motion, please?
I move that we amend the agenda bill to change it to any person making disruptive, impertinent, or slanderous. I'm getting confused.
Don't just state.
Okay, just to remove. I would move to remove the words impertinent and boisterous as being too imprecise.
Second.
All right, motion and a second as stated by Councilmember Shepherd. Any discussion? Councilmember Holloway, then Mayhew.
Okay, so this is a copy of the same words that are put on the council. We just copied them down here. And tell you the truth, this provides a mechanism. It's at the discretion of whoever, of the committee chair, whether they feel it is warranted to enact this. It's whatever you call it, it's their opinion to do. We can all fault them later, but, so I don't think that's a material change you're requesting.
Councilmember Mayhew and then Sunwell.
Just reading this, if the two words are removed, the sentence no longer makes any sense. So if I could propose, if I could make a motion that which I think accomplishes Councilmember Holloway's point, is if my motion is that it read, any person who becomes disruptive while addressing, and then continue on as it is. They're disruptive.
Or slanderous.
No, just any person who becomes disruptive.
I'm sorry.
And then the rest of it.
I heard you say I'm making a motion.
Any person who becomes disruptive while addressing the committee shall be asked to leave by the mayor, presiding officer, and barred from further audience before the committee for that meeting.
I'm looking for a second.
We can't make a motion on top of a motion.
Wait, she had,
Well,
no, wait,
it's
Peggy
kind
had
of
a
like
second.
one of those smaller dinosaurs keep moving down.
No, wait, Peggy
Yeah.
Peggy had a second.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this
We
is
have to
good. I'm
rule
not
that
sure what
first.
the answer is here, whether I can do another subset and then have Peggy react to that, but I think you might be right. This might be stepping on Peggy's motion.
I
I'm
think
going
we
to
have to
defer to
rule on
Jody or
hers first.
I'm going to defer to Jody or Bob on this one.
Is this a motion to amend?
It's a motion to amend. What he's making is a motion to amend.
Subsidiary, which is in order.
Okay. And I just
So
have
now
a-
you got another
I
baby
just have a
dinosaur
comment.
coming out of the bigger dinosaur.
Right.
What's
I
that?
haven't been
I
seconded.
just have a comment.
I
so-
haven't been seconded, so.
You what, Jim?
There's no second to my motion, so it'll die if there's no
Second.
second. Yeah.
Okay. Motion and a second. Discussion. Sorry, Peggy, we'll get back to your motion and then the original one eventually. Councilmember Sunwall and then Lissay.
So there's not a word in here that's not subjective, except for slanderous, but I'm not an attorney, so it's, I know it's a legal term, but you can take out words, you can take out impertinent, you can take out boisterous. If you leave disruptive in, disruptive to one is a party to another. So at the end of the day, in coming up, actually right about a year. So I've been doing these for about a year. Not a single person has ever been asked to be, has been removed from a meeting. And we've had some pretty contentious and very impactful meetings. And so I feel like there's a problem looking for, or a solution looking for a problem, or maybe, I don't know, it's whatever o'clock. So I would just propose we just leave it. I think there's 7 reasonable people up here, 6, I'm not very reasonable, that, you know, if this becomes a problem, we can revisit it. But again, in 12 months of doing this, not a single person has been asked to leave. And I would argue that there has been at times some disruptive, bordering on slanderous behavior. So I just don't think there's a problem. There has not traditionally, historically been a problem.
Councilmember Lissay and then Holloway.
I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Sunwall. I also don't think the amendment to the amendment really makes any sense. It should really be written out and taken care of. I think we are absolutely looking for a problem, you know, looking, what he said, looking for that problem to solve a solution, to create something after 10 o'clock at night and try and, you know, I don't think it's been this way. I think everyone here is reasonable. I think everyone in this, both on council and I think, and the mayor will take appropriate action when necessary. I don't think we need to create new rules just to address that.
So I'm a little confused because I kind of heard Councilmember Sunwall saying, even if the language is left in or leave it in, it's not a big deal because, maybe to paraphrase here, there's plenty of cases around the country, and even Ann McFarland was warning us, that is a tool you use very rarely and very carefully or at your own peril. There was a case recently about that person that was dragged out of the school board meeting, and it got the chairman in pretty hot water. Ann was saying even a guy coming and doing a Nazi salute or whatever is something that you just have to tolerate. It's part of free speech. So it's, I guess
I'm just
I heard
saying,
Matt say he
I don't
agrees with
support
you.
either
I'm
amendment.
saying leave it alone.
Just leave it.
Leave it alone.
Oh, leave it without any additional language.
Just leave it.
Leave it alone.
Leave it.
Well, let's take a vote.
Leave it without any language about that.
Just
Leave it as written, is what
Right
they're
there.
suggesting.
Leave it as written.
So Jim got a second. We need to vote on Jim's amendment to the amendment to the amendment. And then we need,
Only one too many, but go ahead.
Councilmember Holloway.
Okay, so I will advise you guys, the second council meeting that I was sitting in that chair, I had this lined up to do.
I thought it was you being disruptive at that meeting.
It was not me being disrupted, it's me being abused at that meeting. Okay, so to say it would never be used,
Didn't say that.
no. But I think, given some of the issues and contentions that we run through, and these are public meetings, you should have that option
Right.
in there, so.
Leave it.
Yeah, so, well, that's to my point. You're saying something a little different. You're saying leave it as is with the language there. Matt's saying take it out. We don't need more rules.
No. I'm saying leave it as it is.
Okay.
Exactly as it's stated. As it's
Jim's
stated in the
modifying it,
agenda.
Peggy's modifying it.
Like, call the motion?
Okay, call the question.
Call the question.
All right.
We need to vote on Jim's.
All right, all those in favor of calling the question, this is on Jim's junior motion. All in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. All those in favor?
of.
Jim, before we vote, can you restate it, Jim? Because I don't know if Peggy's fine with it or not.
Is there anything I can do?
No.
Yeah, you can restate.
You can withdraw yours, yeah.
The motion was to change 6.4.2.5.1 to read, any person who becomes disruptive while addressing the committee shall be asked to leave by the mayor or presiding officer and barred from further audience before the committee for that meeting.
All right, all in favor?
Actually.
I'm sorry, there's no further debate, Bob. All those in favor?
I'm going to say no.
Aye.
All those in favor? Okay, all those opposed?
No.
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 Whatever it is.
Okay, now we're back to Peggy's motion.
Point of order. Would you please call it?
I'm sorry, you're not, Julie, the point of order is that you're not to speak, please.
I can.
Julie,
No, you
please.
can't, actually.
All right, we're back to Peggy's motion now. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, it would be appropriate to call Councilmember Shepherd in this case.
I'm
Not
sorry.
Not to refer to her as Peggy, but as refer to her as Councilmember Shepherd,
Oh, I'm sorry, all right.
as we all are referred to the same way.
Have I been doing that all night, or what?
Yeah.
Here.
All right, Councilmember Shepherd. Oh, no, I've been doing Shepherd. Maybe a few.
I don't care.
I have. Maybe a few times I said
It's
Peggy.
10
I'm sorry.
o'clock, just
Unimportant.
go on.
Okay,
All
let's
right.
move on.
Any further discussion on Councilmember Shepherd's,
No.
Bob?
So I would make this comment
Councilmember
about,
Jean, sorry.
I would make this comment about Jim's and also about Councilmember Shepherd. If you give more than one, use one word to express what your objection is, whether it's disruptive or whether it's whatever the other ones are, then it almost requires the person who is running the meeting has to say which one of the four or which one of the one or two that it is, or I think the member of the public can object to that. So I'm afraid we're going to get down to, if we don't go with Council Member Shepherd's recommendation, we're going to be left with all four of them, all four of the objections. And you got to be articulate enough to express whether you think it's one of the four. So I think this is just, we're just going down we can't win. I don't think we can win with whatever we're going to do here.
Councilmember Holloway.
I'm sorry, but I believe if you enact this, you will basically say that individual is being, all of them will boil down to that individual is being disruptive to the proceedings of the committee or the council.
So Jim says. So why did
Peace, but guys, you're talking how many angels can sit on the head of a pin. I don't think these word
Four.
changes are material to moving forward with this.
Let's vote.
What's that, Councilmember?
I didn't say anything. No, I think that was somebody else said that. Matt was saying, let's
I
vote.
thought I heard you call the question.
Yes, call the question.
Second.
All those in
Vote
favor
on
of
that.
calling the question?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. All those in favor of Councilmember Shepherd's modification or motion? All
Aye.
those- Okay, aye. Well, all those opposed?
No.
All right, now we're back to the original motion, or the original agenda bill. Councilmember Mayhew.
I would just point out that committee of the whole is described in 6.3.1. It says committee of the whole is used for informal consideration of any issue agreed upon by a majority of the council and removes the normal limitations on the number of times members can speak in debate. If that's the purpose of committee of the whole, I don't understand why we're now joint noticing every committee meeting as also being that when we're not going to do that. I also just don't understand, frankly, what the problem is here. I see that the city of Paulsbo just notices for quorum at every committee meeting. They just notice them for quorum. If we did that, we just notice for quorum, we already have rules that say that only the council, you can't bind the council. I think we're making this more complex than it needs to be, but, and I think that we're doing something that is going to damage this committee of the whole notion, and we haven't thought it through. That's my thought on it.
Any other questions or comments, Council? All right, Councilmember Sunwall and then Lissay.
This is twice in one meeting. I actually sort of, I understand what, I was going to say Senator Mayhew.
He's okay with that.
Councilmember Mayhew is saying, committee of the whole, that does not sound like what we're trying to accomplish with this. We just want to have everybody be able to attend, right? Whereas committee of the whole actually sounds like a or an informal meeting where the 7 of us get together and talk about stuff that we're probably not going to vote on.
No, I think you have to.
So,
And that's not what we're describing.
So, Councilmember Lissay, and then I'm going to go to Bob.
You might want to go to Councilmember Jeans first.
No, other Bob.
Let's
Other
go to
Bob.
Lawyer
Okay,
Bob.
well,
Yeah, Bob Jean.
I think Councilmember Mayhew's making a very strong point that we potentially are diluting the committee of the whole and the meetings that we have as committee of the whole. Therefore, I move to refer this back to committee for future assessment. We've already, and on that subject, that's my motion, is to move it back to committee for further assessment of the
Second.
agreement, amendments, sorry. What was the second?
All right. Motion and a second to move back to committee as stated by
Can I
Councilmember Lissay.
continue on that topic real quick? 'Cause
Go ahead.
No, you were being disruptive.
I mean, we're all, where was I heading with this? We're already announcing the meetings to allow committee members, other council members to attend committees. Let's continue with that until we get this right. And just make sure we got it right, make sure we've fully addressed it. We're not diluting the committee of the whole responsibilities, and we can, maybe the quorum, noticing for quorum is the way to go, so I'll defer to the city attorney on that.
And then I'll come back, Councilmember Shepherd. Go ahead, Bob.
Just quickly, I'm not sure what other cities mean when they say notice for a quorum, except the only possibility would be a quorum of the full council. Because the legal issue they're trying to address is if a 4th member of the council comes, you have a quorum of the full council present at a meeting that is neither a regular meeting of the council nor a special meeting, because it hasn't been advertised that way. And so therefore you have an issue arising under the Open Public Meetings Act. So either you are if you say notice for a quorum, what you mean is notice of a full city council meeting, you are diluting the full city council, or you are, as I've seen and done in other places, saying a joint council committee of the whole / committee of fill in the blank, Parks, Public Works, or whatever, to allow, with a special rule, so that, because the purpose is to allow other members who want to attend to come and participate and listen. So,
And the other,
I think you create other issues if you say notice for a quorum. I acknowledge other cities do it. Everyone's grappling with the same issue. Neither solution is elegant.
well, and Bob, also, I think part of the concern is, and the ambiguity then in that kind of a notice is it a council meeting or a committee meeting? Because if it's a council meeting, then by rules and procedures, I have to chair all those meetings. I don't think you want me chairing all your committee meetings. So, Councilmember Shepherd.
Right, and some of the cities that may do it that way may be council / city manager form of government, where they don't have the same risk of the mayor presiding over all committee meetings.
Huge risk.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So I guess we need another motion in order to extend what we're doing now, is that right? If we punt this to another council meeting.
The motion to punt it is still on the table, where the council could reject it and come back to the original motion and still approve it tonight, so. Councilmember Holloway.
okay, so guys, we got 3 types of meetings. You have council, you have committee, and you have committee of the whole. That's what we have in our procedures. in order to allow you to attend the committee meetings, you can either call it a council meeting or you can call it a committee of the whole per our procedures. Now, guys, you could call it a duck as far as I'm concerned. All this is meant to do is to allow non-committee council members to attend committee meetings. So I'll push back on what you said prior. I think you're over-engineering it. You guys are. Maybe I over-engineered it bringing to you, but again, the intent, and we're the 7 doing it, is to allow non-seated council members to attend committees, and I think that executes it.
And as I recall, Councilmember, let's say you were the one that passionately reprimanded the council for dragging their feet and not getting this done.
And I did, and that's because I wanted to get it done. And I want to make sure we're getting it done right, that we're not going to run ourselves into problems. If the city attorney doesn't think this is a problem, then I'm happy with voting on the motion to go to committee, and we'll see where that goes.
Well, and that's what I've kind of learned over 16 years of doing this, is if, I don't care what you call it, a duck or a horse, as long as my city attorney's telling me it's legal, then it's on him if he messed it up, you know, so.
And tell you the truth, some of the solutions I read in here scare me, okay, of what other cities are doing. Some of them are not appropriate.
Any further discussion on this motion, council? All right.
So we have 2 motions. We have a junior motion still.
Great. Councilmember Lisset.
Right.
To defer to committee.
Right.
Call the vote.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Of deferring to committee?
In favor of sending it back to committee and delaying it
No.
another 2 weeks? What's that?
Okay, please clarify.
That's
that,
what you're
restate.
voting on right now. If you say yes, you're saying, let's delay a couple more weeks and send this back.
Okay, ask the vote again, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, I'm going to do a roll call.
Take a roll.
Councilmember Jeans.
Aye.
Councilmember Ross.
Nay.
Councilmember Holloway.
Nay.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassay.
Nay.
Councilmember Sunwall.
Nay.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Nay.
I believe the nays.
Attorney
You
answered my
both
question.
voted against your motion. I just want you to know.
5 nays.
There are 5 nays.
5, okay.
5 noes.
All right, so now we're back to the original motion. Now we can satisfy the part of Councilmember Lassay that wants to get this done. So,
The city attorney answered my question. He
okay.
Move to call
he
the question.
pointed it out very
All
clearly.
right. Question's been called. All those in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's carried. You'll notice I haven't been asking for public comment, but the reason why I do this, when you guys have called a question, it kind of shuts down debate. It really doesn't matter unless you want me to open it for public comment, if then.
Not this.
All right, so with that, I'm all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Was that Councilmember Jeans and May who was an A? Anyone else? All right. Motion passes. Councilmember Mayhew.
Move to adjourn.
Can't do that.
It's always in order.
You want to adjourn the council meeting?
I do. I feel we're too tired to move on. And I don't think there's anything that is urgent remaining on the agenda.
I was actually going to propose we push AB 18040 to the next council meeting.
I'll point out to Councilmember Mayhew that we have an executive session
All
scheduled.
right.
still to be discussed.
The only concern was, I believe the attorney feels that the executive session is somewhat
Yeah.
time sensitive.
Position.
It is time sensitive.
I'm sorry, I got to wait for it. The executive session is so much time sensitive. We would ask that the council at least allow for that. I don't know if the staff has any comments about the other items that could be punted.
Point of order.
Yes, Councilmember Shepherd.
I need to use the restroom.
So I would make a motion to push AB 18-040 to the next meeting. We'll vote on that. We can adjourn for whatever that's called, and she can go potty.
Okay.
On the way. Wait, you can't leave yet?
No, she can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Fine.
Go.
Actually, she can at any point. Any council member can take a restroom break during a meeting if they want. They just risk missing a vote. Okay, now what do you want to vote on?
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Katie and Peggy.
Councilmember Mayhew made a motion. If there has not been a second asked for,
It dies.
and so, but we haven't even asked for the second, so.
You don't ask for.
Well, I didn't hear one, but that's a good, thank you for
so-
the point of
So I
order.
just want to make sure we're clear that.
All right, is
that's
there anyone
gone.
that wants to second that motion? All right, so that motion dies for the lack of a second. No offense, Councilmember Mayhew, they all love you, but
I was just trying to make a point. I didn't think it would pass.
So now we can.
I would like to make a motion
There you go.
that we defer AB 18-040 to our next council meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to defer Agenda Bill 18040 to the next council meeting. Any discussion? Bob? Is there any time sensitivity on bumping the ordinance on the salary?
Commission?
Yeah, yes, that's not time sensitive.
Not at all, no.
I'm sorry, I was thinking that was the staff one. All right, any other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Executive session.
Councilmember Mayhew, you wanted a, oh,
I'm almost at 20 hours now.
right, I got you. All right, so everybody ready to, I guess we could just go into executive session, and Councilmember Shepherd will probably join us about the time we're ready to start. So with that, at this time, I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting and call for an executive session regarding a property acquisition pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, Section 1B. Bob Sturbank, Bob Larson, Nicole Sanders, and Mark Hoffman are asked to remain. The executive session will last approximately 10 minutes, and there may be action following. Everyone else is welcome to go home, or they can hang out outside and come back and join us and stay till midnight.
Won't be long.